位如果菲律宾的选手再赢一盘呢，就是2金了。不知道他是否能够承续他们菲律宾选手的好的状态，还是说咱们来自于瑞典的 Orange 帅哥能够打败他呢？让我们拭目以待。首先让他们来握手。
Please shake hand, guys. So let's get started.
Yes, and I think they also need a really strong strength to carry that trophies. I heard it's 20 kilograms. It's true.
I will help.
Yeah, we will help them. All right, 好，那么让我们来看一下。
Is Staz bringing here?
Well, Staz is bringing. Actually, let me look at it. Let me take out my notes right here, right in my pocket.
Yeah, we haven't seen a whole lot of Staz. He's sort of snuck under the radar in this tournament.
Exactly,
so.
That was the thing, and a lot of people sleeping on him because of it. But he's got the mojo going right now. We got that Philippines magic here in the stadium today.
Absolutely. And looking at that, he has the Reno Lock, the Reno Mage, and then from there it starts getting more aggro-oriented. You know, the aggro Shaman, the Pirate Warrior, as well as the Rogue, which, you know, Sixel has been calling an aggro deck.
Aggro deck, I'm like, okay.
It's going to take him a long time to teach you how to play that deck.
It's going to take him
a very long time. Oh, man, and I'm excited to see these matchups get played. I am very excited for it. And WESG, if you're just watching now, if this is the first time that you've been able to jump in, it's been such an incredible tournament because we're seeing all these different regions get represented in a way that they never have before. And now we're really putting the Philippines on the map here.
Yeah, absolutely. And in the top 12 of our tournament, that single elimination portion, we had 2 from Germany, 2 from Sweden. Other than that, a lot of Europe, a lot of Asia, you know, a sprinkling of Americas. Unfortunately, Africa not able to get into that top 12. But, you know, just sprinkling from all over the place, and really good to see all countries represented here.
I hate to put you guys on the spot, but I'm about to do it. Make a prediction. Who do you think's going to take this series?
You know, Staz has been absolutely on fire in this tournament. He's basically upset the entire way along this bracket. We didn't think he was going to get past Fluffy. We didn't think he's going to get past Bunny Hopper, but he's made his way here. That said, I think the buck stops here. I think Orange's experience will carry him through to this championship because he has won multiple LAN titles before.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Orange as well. I think that since he joined Alliance and since the Swedish guys have been helping so much, like each other's preparation, I think Orange is just a little bit better prepared, and I think that maybe Staz probably hasn't got quite as much support behind him in terms of actual skill level. He's got a lot of support behind him from the Southeast Asia community, but I think that Orange has just got such a network of great players helping him right now. I think he'll take this down.
Yeah, and I'm usually not the type of guy to make a prediction, but since I put you guys on the spot, I have to follow suit. I really think Orange is going to be able to take this one home, and part of the reason is we've had so many opportunities. He's been on stream throughout pretty much the entire event, so I've gotten to watch quite a bit of his play, gotten to cast over quite a lot of his matches. The guy hasn't been making mistakes. He's going to be a very tough opponent to crack.
Well, it's official. Staz is going to win now.
Yeah, I just
we just gave the full caster curse, right?
Full on caster curse, 3-0. Staz, congratulations on the
we don't even need to watch. Let's just wrap it up. When we cursed Orange. Staz is looking very focused though here as well. Now we get one more look at that trophy. $150,000. Second place takes home $70,000, correct? So you're getting an opportunity to more than double your money.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, Staz, you can see, I can really tell if he was, you know, nervous or calm and composed. It's kind of hard to tell in that booth in there, but this is the biggest match of his life for sure. By the way, the semifinals was the biggest match of his life, and then the quarterfinals before that was the biggest match of his life. You know, prior to that, basically he played at the Winter Championships for Asia Pacific, and he got knocked out pretty early. Yeah. I mean, that was the biggest tournament he had been in up to this point. Played in a couple of majors, you know, Thailand major, Singapore major, but other than that, I mean, this is definitely the biggest moment of his Hearthstone career.
Yeah, and I mean, Lorinda, you touched upon it. One of the reasons he hasn't been able to show up and put up these results is because things like visa issues, and now he's finding himself in a position where that's not an issue.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Honestly, I'm so excited for Staz. Either way, I mean, $70,000 worst case scenario. So pleased that, like I say, Hearthstone sort of owed him a bit from somewhere because he's had so many results and not even had the chance to get paid in these events, let alone actually, you know, win them. So
now finding himself in one of the biggest Hearthstone tournaments to date.
And by the way, what a story it would be after last year, both finalists in BlizzCon being from the Europe region. Now, starting off 2017 with an Asian representative winning the biggest tournament of the year thus far.
And NA.
Yeah, well. But, you know, I'll just jump on the Asian bandwagon here.
I've been deserted by Raven and Sottle these last few days. I've had to stick up for myself 1-on-4.
Yeah, well, you know, I can kind of chameleon my way over to the Asian side. You know, I do live in Japan, so
Well,
you know.
it is time to decide who the Grand Finals champion is going to be. So we're going to throw it over to Frodan and Noxious to kick off this match.
Thank you very much, Rich, and welcome everybody to the Grand Finals of WESG 2016. My name is Frodan. I'm joined by a very excited Noxious.
Yes.
Together, we're going to show who is going to get $150,000 take home to begin 2017. Although this is the closing of the 2016 circuit, so we do want to clarify that in the future we hope to see WESG continue to grow. And I think a Staz victory for the Philippines, for Asia Pacific, would be monumental to advancing that hope.
Yeah, I think in terms of encouraging the development of esports in the region and maybe getting more of those international events together would be a really big thing. Plus, we just had the Dota 2 team, I think, won by the Philippines as well.
Yeah,
so that's a big thing.
Maybe the Pinoys can come out. The
Yeah.
Pinoy Army already showing up in chat, really showing their support. And I think it goes a long way to show you just how much perseverance and persistence a guy like Staz has come to the Grand Finals. He is, of course, a player that I'm looking at to make big waves because if you guys don't know about him, he has qualified for a Hearthstone Championship Tour championship for Asia Pacific last year. That alone, to just get to the top 8, is a really astounding feat. But he did it twice. The second time, though, he couldn't go. Instead, they got Ping Ping Ho and some of these other people to slide into the spot because they were the next runners-up. And then even in 2015, prior to the 2016 year, Staz also qualified for a championship. He couldn't go either because, once again, he still got denied by a visa. So 3 times, this guy should be playing for a BlizzCon spot over 2 years, except he got denied twice. So you can count that as 67% of the time, he just doesn't get a chance to even compete for the money. Yeah. Is this karma finally catching up to him, and he gets finally the retribution that he desires, Noxious?
I mean, being in the top 8 already is a big deal for an event of this magnitude, but being at least 2nd place in WESG is a massive deal. And I think I want to commend him for the, just not giving up on the whole thing, because it's been kind of disheartening, I'm sure, on his side, just not being able to attend those events. And it takes a lot of mental fortitude to just stick to it, despite the discouragement that might come along.
Yeah, that's right. Now, Orange, on the other end, he's a player that's always been kind of like ride or die based off his emotional status. I feel like Orange, in the past, used to be controlled too much by the ebb and flow of Hearthstone momentum, and when we say momentum, we're talking about how you can run hot and you feel invincible, but then when you start losing a lot, you start doubting yourself and you start losing that motivation to even practice. Orange went through the highs of the highs where he's won IEM Katowice, a Seat Story Cup, some of these really insanely stacked tournaments, DreamHack Leipzig, but then he's also gone through periods where 6 months he couldn't win a single series and he dropped extremely low in the rankings. His win percentage was really down. He wasn't really getting into any tournaments. He wasn't even qualifying for any of the main big opens. But at the same time, Orange has also been very consistent whenever he decides to kick into full gear. Every time he decides to practice, I see Orange always on the cusp of a top 16, top 8 at DreamHack, or going really far in some of these events and online qualifiers. This could be finally his way to just show the world once again that he's a player that's not going anywhere. People put him as a one-trick pony, like a one-and-done player. We've seen a lot of people in Hearthstone win an event and then just be forgotten. Orange wants to be remembered again for the 3rd straight year.
Yeah, well, one of the big things about this match that's interesting to me is the lineup difference, right? We see Orange with, in terms of discrepancy, a Dragon Warrior with the Pirate package, of course, and the Jade Druid. So I want to see how well that lineup fares against the rest of the field, because he's the only player in the top 4 who had the Jade Druid. In fact, the other 3 players had the exact same lineup for the entirety of the top 4.
Yeah, assuming that it holds true to what Orange wants to do, that Jade Druid will line up very well against Mage and Warlock, considering that it should be able to win out in the control sides of the game. However, we've been seeing some upsets in the matchups because the players are well aware of their deck's weaknesses, and we've seen a lot of players try to reverse it. They play to the 10 to 30% probability wins and be able to sneak out a victory against the odds.
Yeah, it's been kind of amazing the amount of all-ins. When the engines are so slim in the matchup, we've seen a lot of Reno mages just pulling the trigger on the burn super early, and the rogues just going all-in super early as well. It's been kind of interesting to see how the players navigate the matchups. Now, the Pirate Warrior, the Dragon version against Rogue, is still very well positioned just because of the fact that it's able to put in a lot of pressure through minions like Alexstrasza's champion with the weapons as well. So there is still a lot of reach, and I believe Orange is running, the unique execute with Bookworm as well.
Yeah, you know, you look at the early game start from Orange. He's got double Alex Strauss as champion into Frothed Berserker and Twilight Guardian. This looks like one of those, quote, unstoppable curves that Dragon Warrior has, and you can't really deal with. You're already at 21 health. And you know what? It's not necessarily just the fact that Orange started off with the Dragon Warrior, but he's also been starting off with Dragon Warrior every single match. So if I'm Staz and I've been studying Orange's matches, I kind of put him on Dragon Warrior to start the matchup. Is this really what he wanted to open with? Maybe if he figured and he could put Orange on Dragon Warrior to start off, he could have started off with his Reno Warlock instead.
Right. Yeah, get a bit of a better matchup against a mid-range deck as opposed to opening with the Rogue, which is also struggling to just deal with any of the early game pressure that's coming up. But again, also, the texture of the hand from Staz, one of the worst. I mean, there's Small-Time Buccaneer giving a patches would be great. Swashbuckler giving a patches to combine with the Eviscerates. Backstab, he's got the SI, he's not on the coin. Everything's going wrong right now for his Rogue play.
Well, he has two options. He can either remove one of these Alex Strauss's champion 3/3s with Eviscerate, or he can play a SI to get some board tension and hopefully his opponent makes the trade for him. But it feeds too easily into his opponent's removal if he had War Axe or something else. And now Staz, he's going to work on half of his life by turn 3. His opponent's going to be able to put him down to 15 with momentum not really stopping.
Yeah, and Orange is going to be probably developing the Frothing Berserker here, as dealing with one of the Alex Strauss's champion took one Eviscerate away from Staz's card pool, and Eviscerate is one of the cleanest answers to the Frothing Berserker, so this guy should be able to do some work even if one of the minions gets answered over the course of a turn or two.
Okay, Small-Time Buccaneer allows Staz to activate the Eviscerate for very cheap, so he still has an opportunity to fight back for the board here, but he's kind of starting his game at half health, which is, you know, everything that makes Dragon Warrior even more oppressive, because he has that Dragonode Crusher in the hand already. So if he ends up needing that, then that 9/9 is going to be really intimidating to deal with. Otherwise, if Staz chooses to go for a very passive route here, try instead to just play Tomb Pillager normally on 4, he's in for a bad time. So I'm looking at the Small-Time Buccaneer here to try and grab Staz some board position.
Yeah, I like that a lot. One of the things, too, is that if, for instance, Orange does not have Fiery War Axe, if he doesn't pick up Blackwing Corruptor, there is a way for a slower game plan to pan out. Because if there's limited amount of bursts, right, in Orange's deck, if the Korkrons don't show up, if you just hope that all the bursts are at the bottom of the deck, Rogue can still come back from a position like this. It's a little bit more difficult when you commit heavily to the board and lose away the resources. So I don't mind this line, but you're really preying on bad draws.
Well, I mean, if you're kind of banking that your opponent doesn't have an easy, clean way to remove this, Korkron Elite on turn 4 would pretty much just smash into this and then be able to put too much damage and pressure on you. So this is what Staz is doing. Staz says, I don't think I can win playing very reactive with Small-Time Buccaneer. I think it's too weak of a play. I need to play my Tomb Pillager, hope for something really strong like Backstab or Drake with the preparation that lands onto it, and try to, you know, bet on that instead.
Oh, there is the Fan of Knives Eviscerate to clean up a chunk of the board. If Fan of Knives draws, what would it even have to draw? Preparation does not do anything. The Eviscerate would use up the remainder of the mana.
Yeah, I mean, if he got a prep, he actually did have a board clear this turn.
Right.
He was able to prep Fan, Eviscerate, and SI. As of such, he's still a little bit off.
Oh, he could still do it, right? If he goes Fan of Knives, Preparation, Eviscerate into Small-Time Buccaneer and phase damage into the 3/3. There's like a fringe case scenario where that works out, but it's not looking glorious.
Okay, well, Staz can remove at least 2 of these threats here. And I guess he also could just play the second Buccaneer as well and get as much board, but he's working at 7 life or less now. And I mean, with Orange's Fiery War Axe, it already kind of makes it feel like you're playing with almost nothing. And he does have ability to be aggressive. He has Leroy, but you know, your opponent didn't take a single point of damage this entire game. And now with that Korokron Elite, and the fact that Rogue pretty much doesn't have any taunts or heals in the deck outside of Swashbuckler grabbing something crazy, I'm pretty sure that Orange could just put a 2-turn lethal onto his opponent right now.
Yeah, I think it's probably slightly safer to start with the War Axe and develop the Frothing on top of it instead of the Korkron, but overall, it's mostly a matter of going through the motions. Orange is trying to run through what the worst case scenario could be for a spot like this, and again, it goes back to the Swashbuckler bringing out something like a Bloodhoof Brave to stall the board, or, you know, Public Defender. Let's get crazy. It's not something that's going to stop the Warrior for a very long time.
Yeah, and normally Dragon Warrior doesn't also draw this well. I mean, it had the coin Alex Strauss' champion into Alex Strauss' champion, followed by the Frothing Berserker and the Twilight Guardian. That's almost a dream scenario, card for card. You might want to work in some weapons there if your opponent's fighting back, but Rogue also had a passive early game, which is something that Staz was really hoping against by going for those early Pirates. And I feel like this first game is just going to go over to the Dragon Warrior. Staz, with the Questing Adventurer, he's going to fight back because he can. He's going to hope optimistically that his opponent doesn't have any damage, but barring any outside of crazy draws that we're not expecting, I'm pretty sure this game is about to wrap it up.
Yeah, it's gonna come down to Fan of Knives drawing Swashbuckler into a public defender. Otherwise, I don't see this going anywhere for the Rogue player. Cold Blood, not quite it. A little bit more damage, but you're very far away from setting up any kind of lethal. However, from his perspective, maybe he's able to stabilize, and this is a ticket to maybe a questing adventure on the following turn. So
yeah, I mean, the question really wasn't about whether or not Staz could stabilize, because I mean, it actually is a very nice job by Staz to actually get control of the board here. But it was about how much health would he have left after it was said and done, especially with an Eviscerate, take the damage on the 3-3 while your opponent's pushing right back. That kind of start is nearly impossible to come back from. I think Staz really contemplating if he wants to attach a Cold Blood here, how much damage can he really squeeze in. Getting 7 in is really important. And if he had Leroy in hand, and in the optimistic scenario, the 7-attack minion was able to survive, you actually had a potential lethal off the top. Yeah,
there could have been a source of lethal there, but Orange is going to pick up the Kor'kron Elite, of course, set it up over 2 turns there, making sure everything went well. He actually opted to kill the Tomb Pillager on the turn prior to that to make sure his board wouldn't get cleaned up. For the worst case scenarios where, there's a taunt in the way that comes up.
If Orange didn't have that Kor'kron Elite and say his best move that turn was either the 9-9 or Bookworm, I don't know, maybe Staz had a chance to top deck that lethal with a second Cold Blood or Eviscerate. Would have been really interesting to see, but that passes in the past. And Orange gets to a very important game number 1 win. But again, I have to kind of put the control or the question mark over Staz's head, because you know that Orange tends to start Dragon Warrior, and you have a lot of options against it. But perhaps he felt like Rogue was just a safer bet because he's not sure about what his opponent's plays, and that's just the highest percentage across the field.
Right, it is a Conquest lineup as well, right, where most of the decks that are there, you're still trying to lock a win with each and every one of them. Yeah. Rogue still has to win one of those matchups. The only unfortunate thing is that there is still a bad matchup left when you queue with it right off the bat, so there's like a 25% that you get the wrong one, whereas if the Warrior's out of the way, then you can still get the win with it afterwards. Yeah.
I mean, I see what you're saying, that you kind of want just Rogue to play, and it is Conquest where every deck has to win anyways, but in Conquest, and especially when the stakes are really high, with $150,000 on the line, players are doing everything they can to stay calm, and the number one thing that people usually default to is habits. And it's not. It could be small things like the way you click on the mouse, the way you kind of fix your hair if you're Orange and look in the mirror 5 times before you go on stage. Sure. It can be the way you sit in the chair. But for some people, they also stick to the same picking orders a lot because they're just used to it, and it's either subconscious or very conscious because they're just trying to make sure they stay in the same pattern. Some people are very ritualistic like that. So I think, and Firebat actually talks about this a lot, how you have to get every single freaking edge you can in Hearthstone. Yeah. Even if it's 0.5%. That's 0.5%. That's sometimes out of 200 that you win.
If it's your mental game that's going to be affected by it, and it is a game about your mental state, right, for the most part. So that does make sense.
So if you pin Orange on the Dragon Warrior, I think you got to take your chances and really get that jump. But it is best of 7, and a lot of things can change. We've seen people go up 2-0 and then lose 4 in a row. We've seen people just get 4-0'd. Anything can kind of swing back and forth because there is a lot of room for decisions over the course of a lot of games, because we could play up to 7, assuming that we get to that point. Now, Staz is going to go ahead and switch to his Pirate Warrior that has a Naga Corsair. I was just going to bring this up. It is something that I didn't really expect prior to this tournament, but when I see it being played and it happens to curve out, it's one of those things where it just feels so unstoppable.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Tomb Pillager of the Pirate Warrior deck, really. Like, you just look at it from that perspective, and suddenly you respect it a lot more. When Tomb Pillager connects to face and Rogue has had an explosive opening, suddenly they can close out a game very quickly, and Warrior's even more well-equipped to close out the game, given that their deck is built to do that. So I really like the Naga Corsair. Not a card you want to get when you're behind, and it doesn't really help you set up any future plays. It's just one good thing to get on curve.
All right, well, Staz gets the Bloodsail Raider. He was looking for pretty much anything to play on turn 2, but that's definitely one of the better ones here. And Staz has also been not attacking with the weapon, kind of hinting that he has either a Bloodsail Cultist or the Naga Corsair, but if I'm Orange, I'm always thinking about Bloodsail Cultist, which kind of makes him scared because, you know, if he gets an Innervate, for example, would he Innervate swipe this? Maybe.
Yeah, that's a good question. Like, the fear is there, but I guess you still have the Wrath to clean up the 3-3, which is the bulk of the damage, and you have the swipe as a follow-up. We saw him mulligan away the Jade Blossom in the earlier phases because it's a bit too slow against this type of deck, and he wasn't really sitting on too much in terms of answers.
Yeah.
It is something that some people, however, do keep.
Yeah, I do feel like, you know, as a whole, the community has been largely conditioned to believe that drawing Wild Growth on turn 2 or something equivalent to that, whether it's Jade Blossom or Pilfered Power, whatever,
Sure.
wins you the game like most of the time, or just, you know, automatically wins. But against aggressive decks, Druids for a while now, for about a couple years, have been really throwing away Wild Growth against really fast decks because they need to get that Innervate. They need to be able to get ahead of the game. Because the power of Wild Growth is that over 5 or 6 turns, you gain 1 crystal per turn on average. Well, usually.
Sure.
But the power of Innervate is that you're able to get ahead on the tempo, so that way you can benefit from it. And a lot of times the aggro decks don't really give you that working room to benefit off of a Wild Growth.
Right, you don't have 5 turns to get that extra crystal to really matter, so you end up taking an extra 5 to 6 damage overall, and it really cripples your ability to stay in the game. Now, Orange has the Jade Blossom coming back to say hello, but I think the swipe is probably the line of play he's going to opt for. There's an argument to be made for Jade Spirit, if only because it's going to soak up maybe the 3-3 and then reduce it to 1 health, where the swipe gets more damage dealt on the following turn, but it feels too slow, and you really need to preserve your health in this matchup.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of a Jade Spirit this turn because you're probably going to swipe next turn anyways, and you just gave up 5 health, and that health is extremely crucial because then Ancient of War becomes more powerful. So I think that, you know what's also even really good is that you can also squeeze in Jade Blossom and Jade Ult next turn and kind of do what Jade Spirit was going to do anyways and gain that Mana Crystal. Right now, I think as Druid, your win condition is solely playing an Ancient of War with the best board state possible. And if you can lock down an Ancient of War that won't immediately die, I think you could just feel like you've won the game. It's not completely certain, but it almost feels like that way.
Yeah, and just like that, look at the Naga Corsair on turn 4. Druid just used a swipe.
Yeah.
Took out a 3-3 and 2 1-1s. Felt pretty good about it. Now down comes a 5-4, and there's no immediate answer to it, which means it's going to connect for an extra 5 damage that Orange can't afford taking, really.
He does have a mulch, which I think you're
sure.
probably going to have to be using, because again, you don't want to give your opponent any kind of damage. But the damage already sort of has been dealt.
Yeah.
This 4-mana 5-4 has dealt 3 passive damage by just the virtue of buffing the weapon. And Staz kind of having a little bit of an awkward situation here, but you know, the Twilight Drake is something to fill out the curve with an upgrade if he wants to kind of work that in there. Berserker. The Frothin Berserker also is kind of a viable choice in this position too, because you can get that extra buff going, and that kind of makes Arcanite Reaper plus the upgrade next turn really good. It's a little bit hard to say because you have a lot of weapon charges and you need to budget out for the next few turns, while also accounting for what Druid can do in the next few ones as well.
Yeah. I like the Twilight Drake upgrade just because the discrepancy in damage gain maybe is like you get 6 damage by playing it now, you get an extra charge and the +1 on the 2 charges. Arcanite Reaper really represents only 8 more, so you're only getting 2 more and you're not developing a minion this time. I like playing Onkur this time around, so I'd be tempted.
So you like Twilight Drake and upgrade?
Yeah, that's the line of play I'd be tempted to follow.
Okay. I mean, I wouldn't hate it, because that means next turn you're just going to play Frothin Berserker plus what most likely is a low drop curve. And you're, like you said, this upgrade is still worth 6 damage, so it's still really strong.
1 mana, deal 6.
So if I'm Orange, I really feel like I need to hit that Ancient of War somehow. So it feels like you have to ramp to some degree, but the question is, do you play Jade Blossom and just summon a 2/2, or do you just nourish for crystals and I guess when you nourish for crystals, you're just hero powering.
Yeah, you're just getting an extra.
No, I mean,
I've learned all about that.
Yeah,
It's giving you 1 more armor. Yeah.
So I guess Jade Blossom it is, because you're still hero powering both ways. The Jade Spirit, the problem with it is that you're only summoning a 2/2 just like you would with Jade Blossom. Or I guess you're saying I'm 2/3 with it.
Right.
But you don't get the hero power, and you know, even as much as it might seem trivial, that +1 health, or in this case armor, is very critical if you need to survive by 1 HP.
Well, looking at the board state too, we're looking at 4
Wow.
damage on the minion, 4 on the weapon. That actually could equate out over 2 turns to 16 exactly. So that 1 extra health might be the difference.
So a criticism against Naga Corsair, of course, is not necessarily its effect, but it's just how mana usage intense it gets as you progress. You know, this is more looking like a mid-range warrior hand, where it's like you got 3, 4, 5.
Yeah.
You're supposed to be drawing low curves, so you can always be playing smaller stuff. So Staz choosing to play 2 of these, this is starting to bite him in the butt a little bit. We've been seeing people run 1 Naga Corsair, but he ran 2. Not exactly what he wants to see in this position.
I wonder if he runs Dobard at that point, right? Or Hobart, Doppel, whatever the name of that guy is.
The weapon, the legendary weapon.
If the weapon buff is what matters here, then of course that card would make sense. But I think he values the body size of the 5/4 because there aren't too many answers to it in other decks, really.
Well, you know, the good news for Staz is even though he played this Naga Corsair, which was, you know, definitely it's like a Frothing Berserker that already had +3 on it, so it's just better. It challenges the Ancient of War pretty well, and it doesn't look like Orange can actually get through any of these minions and make his Ancient of War stronger. So right now, if he plays Ancient of War, which is most likely the play, even if his Azure Drake hit a very insane like Wrath or something like that, it's just worse. So I think you have to Ancient of War, and when you do, you're going to be working on what looks to be 4 health or less when that Twilight Drake comes down.
Right, because you do have the Twilight Drake from the Mulch that's still able to swing as it's not dead. It's actually kind of interesting to think about how important the Mulch against aggro can be. If it gives them something that's very much off-curve, it's going to be tremendously better for you as the Druid player. Whereas if you give them something to fill out their curve, like in this case, he got a 4/4 out of it, it's a little bit more tricky when you're looking to nail down the board with an Ancient of War. So kind of awkward. Looks like the minion Naga Corsair is going to have to trade itself away with the weapon. This hook came a long way.
Yeah, you know, that was a pirate hook that was played on turn 1, by the way. That was the he just got upgraded, and then it got buffed twice by the Naga Corsair. You know, a card again that I was not expecting to see play. So, you know, definitely a crazy amount of damage being put in there, and just shows you the impact of Naga Corsair, why it was a cool deck. The unfortunate thing about these things that about Sassy decking is that you can't actually get the charge effect in. So a little bit awkward there.
What are we looking for here if you're Orange? Another Ancient of War? Would that really solve the problem? I think at this point, we're looking down the barrel of some Hail Mary or another. It's...
Yeah. I'm trying to think if Nerds can draw anything with 3 mana remaining. You can draw
Innervate and Swipe?
if you have Living Roots and a Wrath.
Okay.
You can actually clear the entire board.
So Innervate and Swipe and Wrath Living Roots would do it.
Yeah, of course, we know that he's dead just from the Arcanite Reaper, but he'll do his best. I mean, it looks like he's just dead anyways.
Yeah.
So that means it's a tied series. Both these players getting off to a very good draw with their Warrior deck. So we kind of got the Pirates sort of out of the way. I know people look at Miracle Rogue these days as a pirate deck. I feel like it's kind of hybrid. It really doesn't run anything besides the small pirate packages, and it's not completely dependent on it as its primary win condition compared to the Warrior deck and, you know, to a lesser extent
deck
Shaman.
as well, yeah. Yeah, that's true.
I do want to call the question. What do you think about Orange's choice to go Druid? Because there seem to be 2 matchups that it is really unfavored against. It has Rogue and it has Pirate Warrior, while 2 favorable matchups. Do you really think that was his best cue on game number 2 here?
I think on game number 2, it might not have been the best one. Again, going back to the argument that you really want to get that edge to feel safer and calmer over the entire series. But overall, I feel like just the deck itself in the context of the lineup just makes a lot of sense.
Well, now with 3 classes remaining, the best of 7 has turned to a best of 5 as you guys take a look at that beautiful trophy sitting there, shining in the golden light.
Ooh.
Looks like we have a Rogue Mirror here, and, you know, I kind of was feeling that Rogue would be one of the better decks to queue for Orange, because against the rest of it, the worst that he had was a Rogue Mirror, and I guess Staz feels the same way. Rogue Mirrors have also been very, very one-sided today. I feel like some of them have just been like one person taking a huge beatdown, and then the other person just kind of been putting up a fight. I think the closest was Bunny Hopper versus 6-0. But generally, it feels like one player has been getting the edge over the other.
Well,
and a large reason is because of things like this opening fire.
Yeah. This is the kind of opener you can actually recover from. What's really interesting, too, is if you look at the way that, playing Small Time Buccaneer second does, sometimes you'll just hold it on until turn 3. If you're on the coin, or turn 2 where you coin it out after a dagger equip, so you don't lose out on any value. You want to make sure that you're cleaning up the board as you're developing a Small Time Buccaneer. Yeah, the openers are kind of varied now in Rogue, and there have been a lot of spots where people go all in on the questing adventurer Edwin Van Cleef and just hope there's no sap, to the point where some people have actually bringing up, like, do you keep sap in the Rogue mirror match, since going all in is so common?
I don't think so. I think because while you say it's so common, it actually happens below 50% of the time. And that usually means that if in a 50-50 mirror, you're playing to a lower percentage out. So assuming the deck lists are very similar, which they're not, Staz is running 1 questing adventurer and 2 SI7 agents, as you already noticed that when he had it in the previous game. SI7 agents were a little bit, not like they didn't really do anything.
Yeah.
But Staz, assuming that you're running like a 50-50 mirror, you don't want to play something that lowers your percentage to win, and keeping sap in the opening hand tends to do that.
Yeah.
Now, there is a condition where maybe you have your own Van Cleef, as Orange is going to coin out this Tomb Pillager. Very strong turn 3 play. There is a scenario, say you have coin, and say you have like counterfeit coin and like prep and Van Cleef. Say that's your first opening 4 cards. Would you keep sap there? I actually might consider it.
I would probably look at it as an option, because it cleans up the board, and again, you're expecting your opponent not to have it. So you're just making sure that in case they do anything of the sorts, you're guaranteed to get the edge. Yeah.
Okay, well, Orange picks up the Swashbuckler, which, I mean, I'm thinking he's looking for only 1 card when he has that in mind. He's probably taking another sap.
Well, there's Shadow Strike. There's
but
Eviscerate, I guess.
Sap is the best card against Tomb Pillager.
Wow,
okay. Coin.
Can't really complain about that in the matchup, but it's going to have to wait before it's really, reaching maximum value.
I mean, there's definitely worse cards, so I don't think that's definitely it's one of the worst ones. You always see some of these really awkward ones. I was playing Rogue the other day, like yesterday, and I actually I got a Blade Flurry off of mine. I was just like, what? This card still exists?
I don't even run Deadly Poison anymore.
It's like it's the ghost of Blade Flurry haunting me. But in a lot of times in the mirror, that extra coin might be really useful. In this scenario, it doesn't really feel like Orange has a lot of substance. So using the fan here, I'm a pretty big fan of, just because you just have to get something into your hand. And that is something. He's got
is something big, yeah.
The questing and conceal. That allows him to be really aggressive.
It's a really good play for Staz with that Fan of Knives, cleaning up all the 1/1s, and also has the Eviscerate on the back of that to kill off the 5/4. So he gets to stay ahead if he chooses to. Or there could also be a backstab. Fan of Knives, use the dagger, keep the 5/3 alive. That also lets you develop the Swashbuckler onto the board without using up the Eviscerate that can go face later on.
Well, looks like Staz chooses to fan first. I originally was looking at perhaps using backstab so that I could squeeze in the Swashbuckler. Did I say Swashbuckler?
The burglar of pumpkins.
Yeah, I mean, listen, around Halloween time, you got to be really careful. That guy comes and just takes your stuff.
Oh, that'd be so sick for a Halloween event. Just rename cards.
I was thinking backstab and Swashbuckler, but if he wants to use his Eviscerate here, he can also save that backstab for the Gadget Sand, or if he picks up an Azure Drake.
Right, that's what I was looking at too. It felt like I think the most important part of that line of play is the fact that you get to keep the Eviscerate to use on the face later on, right?
Hold on.
Whoa!
That is Questing Adventure, 3 coins, Leroy, and Prep Conceal.
Which means he's pushing 6 now. And an extra full array of damage next turn. Yeah, it is. I think that's a 2-turn lethal. With double Conceal, you can't really stop it unless you pick up double Cold Blood with the second Eviscerate.
So what? The counterfeit coin from the Swashbuckler ends up coming from, ends up being able to put Orange into a driver's seat. And with double Conceal, I mean, even if his opponent was able to magically deal with it, like Swashbuckler into Prep Vanish or something, maybe he has an opportunity to be aggressive after this.
Okay, wait, let's do it. Swashbuckler Prep Vanish. I need to see this right now. Otherwise, the game is just over in favor of Orange here. Is there another combination of cards that could lead to a comeback?
I don't think there's something that says return a random enemy. And things like Sabotage has been rotated out.
Right.
And I think Staz at this point is stuck kind of hoping for something.
He's hoping maybe a Cold Blood would save him, right? A second Cold Blood with the one he just drew off the top could be helpful. I mean, he's able to set up his own counter-lethal if he's not dead next turn, because there's only 14 on the board, 15 if you account for the dagger.
Oh,
so
you're
if
right.
one of the two cards isn't playable off the top, he could set up his own counter-push.
So he conceals his own minions.
Yeah.
State of Rogue versus Rogue in a nutshell.
That's basically what it comes down to these days. And now
So-
Staz has his own lethal ready.
Orange has to draw 1 damage.
He has to draw not Gaddison Auctioneer, right? Or like some unplayable card. Because if he picks up just enough to buff the questing, it would be sufficient. And he found a card
There it is.
that he needed.
An Eviscerate. Yeah, I mean, there was pretty much guaranteed lethal outside of 2 cards in his deck, so a very close one, but, you know, that was actually closer than I thought. I was like, well, you know, Staz is just dead, but
Yeah.
wasn't really accounting for the fact that Orange could have actually had a dead draw there.
Yeah, it's actually pretty tough because there's the Drakes, there's
Yeah.
the even Tomb Pillager, I think, was making it really close, right?
Yeah, one thing that is to call to attention too is, you know, how much was, you know, the influence of Orange being able to go second versus going first, and a lot of people usually point at that, but you know, I gotta say that Orange just made the best with what he had, and that's what you gotta do as a Rogue player. Despite the fact that you get some of these really bad hands, he had 2 coins, a prep, and a fan,
Yeah.
and the Leroy. Like that was his hand, and so he fanned into the auction.
The burglar and then got the second coin.
Yeah, no, he fanned into, well, he had the burglar and the fan, but he also just got into the questing adventure. And when you see that, when you see questing adventure, Leroy conceal, you got to find a way to get aggressive. That's just the key to playing Rogue these days.
Yeah, but Staz, honestly, like, with the amount of dead draws, I think Orange had something like a 67, like probably something in 2/3 of his cards were fine. But sometimes Tomb Pillager didn't let him dagger up, and then Drake neither, or Gaddison Auctioneer. He wouldn't have been able to do it with a good portion of his deck. Had to go all in on it. Really unlikely he gets reverse pushed the way that he did. So very well played by both players there, trying to set it up.
Okay, so Druid versus Rogue. This is another matchup where I feel like Rogue has the edge.
Yeah.
But Orange is kind of out of options here. This is part of the reason why Rogue feels so good these days, because against those really slow decks like Reno Warlock, Reno Mage, if you run into a Porcel who's playing Reno Priest, you know, first send him a nice message and a nice emote, you know. And then Jade Druids. Like, these are the matchups that Rogue tends to excel at because it gets a lot of time to power up.
Yeah.
And this time Staz is on the coin.
So I discussed a little bit with Impact, right? And Impact, from what I hear, is one of the players that influenced, you know, the people in the event who decided to bring Jade Druid to their, you know, playoffs match lineups. And the ones that did tended to do very well in the event. And I feel like the decision to play Rogue in the event is also motivated by a similar line of thinking, which is, if I get enough shots at this, I am guaranteed to do something degenerate once that the opponent can't answer. And I feel like these two classes are just able to do very polarized things. Sometimes they fall flat on their faces, the other time they do something crazy. And if you bring them in a Conquest format, they're just not decks that you can isolate as easily.
Sure. So going into this turn, Orange had the ideal turn 2 play with the Wild Growth, but his Brand Bronzebeard, that's not really what you want to be seeing.
It was going to stick around. It was going to stick around.
Yeah, he picks up the SI7 agent, a card that's been sort of left on the wayside. A lot of people cut the SI7 agents from their deck lists, and you know, that made me a little bit sad because SI7 is one of the cooler cards in Rogue, not just functionally, but also flavor-wise.
Yeah.
It even gave birth to one of our beloved content creators and front page master.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of those things where I think for too long the SI was considered an unremovable card in Rogue. And it took some experimentation for somebody. I think Amnesiac was the one who made the Questing Adventurer list and played it and thought, you know, this is a meme deck. It's not really going to do anything. It's not going to work. It's not going to be better than standard Rogue. And then all of a sudden, everybody started playing it.
Yeah, it actually was kind of a real thing. Questing Adventure was, you know, a very classic card, and in the sense that it was very old back in the beginnings, and now it seems to be very commonly played, and with counterfeit coin also being a potential way to buff it, excuse me, along with the cheap pirates. It seems like a very good synergy.
Okay, well, Orange has got a hand filled with removal, and like he's got double Feral Rage, double Swipe. All the 4 health minions are gonna die, but he still hasn't been able to develop any Jade Golem. So it's gonna be a matter of playing the control game here against the Rogue, which is anyway what he finds himself doing for the most part.
That's interesting to me. It looks like Staz is setting up for a huge questing and Edwin turn. Like, I was thinking about Coin Azure Drake because it felt like, you know, the most natural, but Staz has the flexibility of doing questing adventure, playing all of his cheap stuff, and then playing an Edwin Van Cleef, assuming he draws a single spell. And, you know, Druid can remove one big threat, as you saw Orange had that mulch in his deck from the previous game he played Druid. But can they remove a big questing and a big Van Cleef? You kind of have to choose one or the other, and you often have to remove the questing because of its potential.
Yeah.
So the Van Cleef, whatever usually gets played, sticks. Unless it becomes like a 10-10. In that case, you probably have to kill the Van Cleef.
It's kind of interesting because Staz is looking at, you know, potentially getting an 8-8 Van Cleef if no other spell is picked up, if he wants to go all in, or, you know, waiting for the get to 10. He's got a lot of lines of play open to him if he doesn't commit to the Edwin, as you mentioned. So Orange, even though he's got all the control cards in the game, none of them is really good enough to behave as spot removal. He's going to have to use the Innervate in order to clean up some of the bigger minions that Staz can end up doing. So
yeah, this is a pretty bad hand for Orange. Just all removal spells. Can't really ramp up his Jade significantly on 6 mana. Staz, you know, kind of keeping his cards conservative because he wanted to play his questing adventure turn, and now it looks like he's going to go for it. Instead of playing the prep spell, though, he now can just use backstab and the coin instead. That makes it an 8-8 Van Cleef with a 5-5 questing adventurer. Still pretty reasonable threat. Although, you know,
I mean, it is a lot. It is weak to, you know, a Druid that ramped and has that many cards in hand and hasn't played them. That's the tell you get. When Druid has a hand this full, it's got to be either filled with, you know, Nourish, Gaddatan Auctioneers, Ancients of War, or a lot of removal. So you know those cards may not be as safe as you'd like them to be.
Give me a quest.
You know, I wouldn't hate just an Azure Drake as well this turn. And I know, you know, we were talking about ramping up to this pretty sizable Van Cleef questing adventure Wombo combo. Oh, he is using the preparation.
Goodness, okay. There we go.
Okay, sure.
Let's do it. That way you can't just innervate, swipe, swipe.
Yeah, 10-10 and a 6-6 is much more threatening than a 5-5 and an 8-8. Which,
against Druid, whoa. This has got to be one of the few cards that Orange can use to actually clean up this full thing, right? Using the Feral Rage and the double innervate and the swipes. It leaves him with nothing, though. Like, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, but your opponent just tossed his coin and his prep out, so even if he had Auctioneer, he has almost no resources, so I feel like it's warranted. I'm trying to find out the most efficient way to clear, and I feel like using double swipe has to be involved, but I'm not seeing a very... I guess you... Oh, if you swipe both of the targets, one of them each, and then you innervate Feral Rage, or double innervate Feral Rage...
You can kill the...
with the hero power? I think that should be
I mean, you could double swipe the... You could double swipe the questing, and then innervate out the two... Double innervate, double Feral Rage, kill the Edwin, but you take 10 in the process.
Oh, you want a double Feral Rage.
I mean, the problem is that if you end up double swiping, you're not killing Edwin unless you hero power. Because it's a 10.
I think you have to double swipe to make it clean, though.
Yeah. Like, I think you have to double innervate, double feral in that case, right? Unless you're looking to kill just the one minion.
Oh, he doesn't have enough to hero power. I miscounted. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought he could innervate and Feral Rage and hero powers for 5 damage. But
No, it was really one or the other. Like, there's no
Yeah.
killing this
Okay.
safely or, like, cleanly, that is, unless you double innervate. And even then, something stays.
Well, the Van Cleef getting 10 damage in, that's massive. And with double swipes being removed from Orange's hand, Staz has to be feeling pretty good. Wrath and 2 swipes have been used so far. I don't think Sap is really warranted in this position because you know Ancient of Wars could also be something that happens from your opponent.
Thank you.
So I think just, oh, he's punching it.
Okay, setting up a kill on it over a few turns. He's seen
Sure.
one Wrath, right? So the odds of there being a second one, pretty slim.
I do think the hit to face is kind of relevant if you can sap and hit everything to the face, because right now you have 16.
Yeah.
So if your opponent hero powers, like say you play Ancient of War,
With innervate and...
Yeah, or in like innervate hero power, like just in a case where like he removes something or he plays a taunt, you know, sap hero power dagger. You kind of need 16 damage to your opponent.
I could see that. So
that's the only thing I was concerned about.
Orange looking down at the Edwin. It looks like he's gonna have to take another hit from it, as there is really no other way around it.
And you can use one to gain 8 life. You can use the other to gain 4 attack.
Or the 5 cards in a sense, like the draw there, right? The Innervate and the Wild Growth Runner the past 2 turns have been just really crushing because they're really not helping him do anything this game.
Yeah, Druid a deck that needs to perform against the Reno matchups. So, you know, the fact that it's been faltering here is something that we kind of expected. You know, nothing has been happening out of the ordinary. Rogue is favored in this matchup. Pirate Warrior is favored against Druid. But Orange has also been drawing pretty awkwardly because even though it's favored, it's not unwinnable, and it looks kind of unwinnable so far.
Yeah. It's been very one-sided, but it's also due to the fact that Staz spotted the opportunity to play the Edwin on the back of the questing adventurer, just buffing them. He went to the hassle of making the Edwin a 10/10 by wasting a prep for the purpose of buffing the questing and it. Oh, hi.
Oh, that's pretty
I'd play that in Rogue.
Yeah, I would put Innervate in my deck. Yeah, if I was a Rogue player, that is something I would do.
So what does Orange have? You have Yogg, my friend, because otherwise this is going nowhere.
Yeah. If he had another swipe, actually.
A third swipe? Raven Idol, really perhaps.
Sick. Yeah, Raven Idol.
That could do it.
A third swipe.
I can see.
That's going to wrap up game number 4, and now a best of 7 has turned to a best of 3 as we're tied 2-2. And I mean, that's how you kind of want the finals to be. You want it to be back and forth, not just a one-sided stomp affair. And the Druid that Orange had so much confidence in prior to this match is starting to kind of backfire a little bit, but it's also to be expected. Once again, Druid's unfavored in those matchups. Going into the playoffs, players were allowed to resubmit their deck lists. They didn't have to stick with their group stage decks. And Arn said that he wasn't going to bring Druid until one of his Alliance team members, Powder, convinced him to bring the Druid, saying, no, trust me, it's good, just do it. And it's gotten him this far. Like, it's been banned before, and it's also won several games.
Yeah, I think Druid was I wouldn't say unexpected class to bring, but a lot of people have been putting it down as a result of it just feels like it's a very linear deck to play. It doesn't really do control better than Reno Lock or Reno Mage, but in a context where you need so many decks to bring, you need something else to fill in. And when you have 5 decks, Druid does the job magnificently.
All right, so now we're going to go to a matchup which is expected for Druid to be favored, especially with 2 Wild Growths in the hand. And against a Reno deck, 2 Wild Growths is an actual hand that you can play versus in most matchups that are not Reno, you probably just only want to play 1 Wild Growth. But I've been hearing a lot of contention from Reno Warlock saying, you know, it's not nearly as bad as you think it is. Some people say, yeah, obviously it's not a great matchup, but it's one of those things where, you know, Reno Warlock, it might be underrated. It's more like the Jade Druid can win a lot easier, and the Reno Warlock has to outplay the Druid, but they still can win.
Yeah, it also comes down to the fact that the Warlock doesn't have a dozen cards to curve out the Druid with, right? Like, playing on tempo against Druid is exceptionally powerful. The Imp Gang Boss is one of those cards that helps if you can transition it into the Twilight Drake, for instance. But those are very specific combinations of cards for the Warlock to get, and it's very difficult to set up a kill. I don't know if Staz is running the combo kill in his deck. That is another one of these pieces that can sometimes help in the matchup.
Yeah, Staz chooses instead to run more board control elements of his deck and has chosen not to run a Faceless Manipulator with a Leroy Jenkins. That actually does hurt the matchup, I think, a lot, because that is a win condition you can put against Druid if you're able to get the board early, which, you know, this is actually part of what Staz is evaluating. Normally, against Druid, in a traditional sense, any kind of handlock or any kind of Warlock that loves to tap early likes to hit that 4-mana minion that's super powerful, like a Mountain Giant or a Twilight Drake. But we're talking about how you have to win this matchup from the Reno Warlock. You have to take board initiative away from the Jade Druid and try to press that advantage to a victory. So instead of Staz getting a little bit greedy, which a normal Reno Warlock would do in this position, he's choosing to play the Imp Gang Boss, and I don't think that's necessarily an incorrect decision, even though it just so happens to line up really poorly into an
against the Drake for Orange, who really didn't have anything to do on turn 5, right? And found the Drake off the top to help him consolidate that curve.
Yep, Kazakis coming down has a lot of opportunities to do powerful stuff, like summoning a 5/5, which Druid has a hard time dealing with. In this case, it doesn't get it. Yep, transforming a random minion is good. Summoning 2 friendly minions is also decent because he has like decent sized minions as a 2/4 and a 3/3. So if they die, he could potentially get it.
I think against Aya Blackball, the polymorph effect is rather powerful because you're preventing the second golem from being buffed as well, if that's something that matters. Depending on what you expect to come out on 6, right? Because there's the Jade Behemoth as well, which could come out on her in a spot like this one.
Yeah, I think I like the Jade Behemoth a lot more because the 3/3 from the Kazakis body challenges Aya Blackpaw a little bit too easily, even though Aya Blackpaw, in theory is like better for just ramping in general because you get 2 of those crystal or 2 of those Jade Idols powered up instead.
Well, there's the avenue of the Demon Wrath for a full clear here onto the board, developing the Ooze afterwards for tempo, or life tapping into an additional card if you so desire. Those are kind of the obvious lines.
Well, I also really like Twilight Drake to some degree because you kind of want to get it out. And then you also have this thing with the second-hand Bruiser being really cheap, but you can't really squeeze any other mana-efficient play, so I'm not that big of a fan. So if you end up going for Twilight Drake, that means you kind of have to play the Mortal Coil as well. Oh, actually, I don't even remember the Kazakis potion. We need to see what he picked, so...
Yeah, we did not see what it was, but I'm pretty sure the Polymorph would be one of the tempting ones to use in a spot like this one, knowing there is the Ancient of War in the deck that you might have to handle, especially on turn 7 coming right up. You were on turn 4 when you did it. The Druid was already 2 mana ahead of you, so the big minions are about to drop, and you've got to be prepared.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing really wrong with clearing the board against Druid. Demon Wrath, in general, like the AoE against Jade is not very strong as the game progresses. When they start building up 6/6s, 7/7, 8/8, 9/9, things like Demon Wrath, Hellfire get really weak. So if you can collect the value early on, nothing wrong with that. Just that so happens that the 3/2 is extremely weak, and Orange has an opportunity to Gadget Sand Living Roots, Aya Blackpaw Living Roots. Aya is the best tempo, but I think it only summons a 2/2 right now.
Yeah, at the moment it would be just a 2/2 little golem.
Yeah.
I mean, I really liked your line with the Twilight Drake the turn prior because it would be much, much healthier than it is now. If it's played a little bit later in the game, it's potentially a little bit lower on health. But it would have set up decent AoE with the Abyssal Enforcer, Mortal Coil, with the Demon Wrath as flexible removal as well. There's some consideration for it. I really liked it.
Yeah. I think what Orange may be concerned about is like the Kazakis potion, and he kind of wants the Kazakis potion to hit this instead of something else like his Aya Blackpaw. All things considering, a Kazakis potion with the Polymorph would be pretty bad because you don't want it to land ever. Yeah. But sometimes you don't get to choose, and so you have to kind of make a disruption play.
Sacrificial play, right?
Yeah.
On the flip side, we know that it deals 5 damage. That's one of the portions of the potion that we actually know. The other one, though, is the question mark. There was armor, AoE for 4 damage, which might be good if you're facing down a board filled with huge golems.
Yeah. So the benefits of Orange keeping Gadget Sand is that one of the things that Jade Druid tends to struggle with is if it plays really fast onto the board at any point, its refill is completely dependent on Nourish and Azure Drakes, and if you don't really have that, Gadget Sand is really crucial to draw with things like your Wild Growths, but he already used them, Living Roots, Jade Idols, and then at one point towards the late game, you can start power chaining Jade Idols. You shuffle one in, most likely draw another one, and just play them and keep drawing more of them.
Yeah, that's the position you want to put the Warlock into, is that they end up using their Twisting Nether out of desperation in a really awful spot, and you bring them back. There's been some situations too where the Warlock is able to capitalize on a Druid overextension by getting a good Savannah Shadow Flame, cleaning up, the marginal leftovers, and keeping one big Jade Golem on their own side. So there are a lot of ways for Warlock to stabilize, but the problem is always of finding, openers where you're feeling safe enough on your health total that you can actually counterattack. And without the combo, I feel like this matchup is a lot more difficult to navigate.
Without the combo?
Yeah, in the Warlock's list.
Oh, yeah. I don't know. When you said combo, I was like, Force of Nature, Savage? I'm like, what?
We're going back to old times.
Yeah,
PTSD.
Without the Leroy Jenkins power overwhelming combination, it is pretty difficult. It looks like Staz, quick cover said deal 4 damage to everything. So he has that plus summon 2 minions, and that allows him to Mortal Coil the 5/5. So it seems to be a very strong way to open.
Yeah. It's very efficient in this spot. It's one of the better AoEs he's going to get. Again, as the game progresses, the AoE just diminishes in power, so...
A little unfortunate that he drew the Spellbreaker just after he played the Thorsan, so he can't squeeze both Kazakus Potion and Silencing. Hey,
What?
but now he can discount his Spellbreaker.
Draws an extra card too to get the extra value on the top. So that's a really commanding board for the Warlock player.
That's exactly what you really want here, because, you know, there was a possibility that a 1/1 got revived from the Imp Gang boss's Imp, so that was a liability, but Emperor Thorson coming out here is very significant. Not to mention that, you know, now you can squeeze in, like, Reno plus removal of some kind, so that really helps Staz in the later stages of the game if he needs it, or perhaps just flooding tempo onto the board and making Druid deal with high health minions.
Now Orange having to deal with the Emperor again. You know, mid-sized Twilight Drake. 6 health is, I would say, for Druid considered big. It's just very tough to remove. And then only has a 3/3 on the board to do so. So the damage distribution is going to be very inefficient, and it's going to leave Staz with something on the board after this. And his hand texture is not looking particularly good for clearing boards.
Okay, well, I mean, he has an opportunity to play a big Ancient of War, or he can go Gadget Sand, and I think his Gadget Sand's a little bit too weak right now. So he might just be forced to continue to let his opponent discount. I think Gadget Sand's too late to play at this moment.
The issue with the Ancient of War is that you end up innervate swiping and trading into the Emperor with your 3/3, so you waste, quote-unquote, a lot of damage in the process. Hopefully he had enough time to get this action in.
No, I mean, it also looked like Orange was slightly distracted to some degree.
Yeah, it's just something, probably something went wrong, although I'm not too sure what it might have been. Okay, everything was sequenced in the end.
Yeah,
everything ended
it
up
doesn't
okay.
seem like nothing was costing him.
Okay.
Picked up another Innervate, or if he picked up a Rat, that would have
What? Onyxia from the mulch.
been. You know, honestly, it's not even that good if he played it this turn, because then it'd be like swiped down, but
Right.
it's pretty funny that he was able to get that. Let's see here. I mean, Staz is in such a dominant position because he's able to out-resource the Druid. Well, you have easy trades. You can play Sylvanas. That's the first thing that stands out to me. I don't really like playing any of those others. I guess you could also play the small-time Bruiser or second-hand Bruiser.
Abyssal Enforcer is looking really juicy here. If you can deal with the 4/6, it's unlikely the 6/6 is going to be dealt with, and you're actually closing in to finish the game as early as possible. I like the Sylvanas as well.
I mean, it isn't really closing too much though, because this Mistress heals.
Yeah,
but
that's
I
the
see what
extra
you're
play
saying.
that I didn't anticipate the Mistress to come out this turn.
Well, I think I guess what I like about Sylvanas is that it kind of discourages Druid from being able to develop into the board. But if he had removal, then he'd use it right now, and then Sylvanas can't be just removed like this. Because if you played Sylvanas, it'd be swiped down.
And you've seen the mulch too, so that's another play in favor of making your Sylvanas more resilient by cleaning up the board. So there's very little left actually to deal with her, right? Like Wrath, Living Roots, combination plays, Feral Rage with hero power.
Now Onyxia gets a hell of a lot better. He just used 2 swipes.
I'm going in.
Pretty sure Orange can't deal with this.
Thank you for that mulch, my friend. That's essentially a gift. Wow, I don't really know what Orange's supposed to do about this.
Well, he's got Ancient of War and a Jade Idol. And that Jade Idol should summon a 4/4, I believe.
Yeah.
Or maybe I think a 5/5.
That's a 4/4 right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of stats. You know, it's not something trivial at all. You're able to put out a ton of health, and your opponent has to get through it all.
This is kind of what we were talking about, right? Like Staz had an amazing tempo turn when he went for the Kazakus potion, resurrected the Emperor, the Imp Gang boss, had the Drake to play alongside it, and then ended up getting Onyxia. This tempo is stuff that Druid's just going to struggle to catch up from. And just like this, you can see that Staz is in the dominant position. Well, let's steal it.
So he's got 8, 10, 13 damage right now. 16 with Jiraxis. Oh, he can't silence and Jiraxis.
Do you ever Sylvanas Shadow Flame? I would take the taunt and just push in.
Magic shall not save.
Okay, we're going for the Spellbreaker trade. Spellbreaker Shadow Flame, that is.
Yeah, this is actually a really nice clear, because now he gets to put out the 4/5 instead and save his Sylvanas. But I don't really know if saving Sylvanas really matters in this position because I
Yeah.
think Orange is just dead. And that is 3 in a row for Staz.
Okay, Orange is taking off his headset here.
Yeah, he doesn't look happy. Looks like something may have come up. But Staz, he was down originally, going into game number 1 and 3, but now he's taking the lead. So he's been able to finally break the serve, going up 3-2. Only have to win with Reno Mage, and Druid against Reno Mage is also a matchup that is very fair for Druid. But then it'll come down to the Reno Mage mirror, which I don't think Orange wanted to do. If Orange was able to win Druid versus Warlock, then he would have the advantage for the remainder of the series.
Yeah, because you keep the Mage against the Warlock, and that's a matchup you're actually happy about. We've seen a lot of interesting Reno Mage builds. I haven't seen Staz's list exactly, but a lot of people tend to gravitate back towards Inkmaster Solia nowadays, with the Pyroblast added at the top for the burn.
Well, I did take a look at his deck list prior to the series, and Staz does not run the Pyroblast package with Inkmaster Solia. Instead, he runs a little bit more value-centric. He has things like Kabbalist Tome, Manic Soulcaster, like some of these other cards that really tries to get high value but lower curve. And I think he was just talking about how, as much as it's fun to do Inkmaster Solia Pyroblast shenanigans, it's sometimes a little bit too high curve, and you can be suspect to drawing a little bit awkwardly. Yeah. We've all been there, right? The Reno Mage that just gets Antonidas, Alex Strauss with Pyroblast Inkmaster, and you're playing against, small-time Buccaneer. So he ends up running a little bit more value-centric.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind it.
Reno
I
Mage.
feel like in the mirror match, though, there's got to be a slight edge given to the burn-centric one as opposed to the value one, depending. Because, one of the things that's going to matter is when the value is on board, the mage struggles to handle it. In the case of the Reno Mage especially, where they only have 1 Blizzard, 1 Flame Strike. But when the value is in the form of spells, it's a bit less clear how really heavy that value is going to be. So
yeah, well, usually Reno Mage mirrors gravitate in one of 3 ways. One, either both are extremely slow and they're just like controlling the board, and it becomes like a freeze mage mirror where like they're playing really silly stuff to just try to not overdraw, because Reno Mage has so much removal. So you play something into it and then they have like perfect removal with either like Flame Lance, and you just all of a sudden give value to like their cards. Or the other option where like both of them are playing so tempo oriented that they're trying to like one person curves out really strongly with 2, 3, and then like Water Elemental, and then like Adric, and then you can't really stop their momentum, so you just die. And the fourth is one takes the aggressor and one takes the defensive approach, and one person's trying to push while one person's just trying to survive. In all 3 of those scenarios, it really feels, in all 3 of those scenarios, it really feels like Kabbalist Tome isn't really that good.
it doesn't really feel like it fits in any of those values. I've seen value mages in that realm that actually play Medivh in that spot, right? Like, you do give your opponent an outlet for an ooze, but Neria brought this to the event, and we discussed it a little bit. He wasn't satisfied given the texture of the metagame for bringing it, but overall, like, Medivh is a very value-oriented card that happens to flood the board. And that's kind of where I think you want to go if you're going to bring value cards to the mage matchup.
It's true, because it's not necessarily that value is bad. Value is very good in a matchup with like control versus control, but you have to like be mindful of like what that value is actually added. Kabbalist Tome adds random cards from your deck, which means that you don't have to necessarily draw from fatigue, and it also gives you more hand resources per card that you use. So for example, like Arcane Intellect is like 2 cards for 1 card that you're able to draw into and get deeper in your deck. Kabbalist Tome is 3, but not only is it inconsistent, but it's also filling up your hand. So if you're playing like a very defensive control versus control, no one's playing cards, it clogs up your hand because you can't really use it, and then you have like awkward cards where you just get like shatter and you can't do anything with it, and or like really expensive stuff that you can't use.
Sometimes you get the jackpot, and it's like you get a Pyroblast, a Fireball, and an Ice Lance to go with your initial one, and then you just get more burn. But that's not the consistency of it that you're really looking for. And I feel like most people are cutting it out of their list nowadays. It's just kind of gone for the top level.
Because if you're also like playing defensive and your opponent's rushing you down, are you gonna really take 5 mana to Kabbalist Tome? I guess you could, but you also just rather have like another source of defense if you're gonna play a taunt or like AOE. So I'm personally not a big fan of Kabbalist Tome in the tournament, but I can definitely see why it'd be valuable against other things. Like if you see Warlock, for example, or even like sometimes we've seen some people bring Control
Warrior. I think would be a matchup where it'd be okay.
Helps you generate a ton of value.
You'd like that there.
Even sometimes surprising people, and like if you play against a Jade Druid or we've seen the Kabbalist Tome also be really strong against Rogue sometimes because they can't really play around that range. It's sort of like in that range of Babbling Book where I feel like some of that tech might be useful. But if there's one thing that I can kind of agree on with a lot of these players is that I think Manic Soulcaster is actually a great addition to a lot of these Reno major lists. What do you think?
It was downplayed at first, right? Like one of the big criticisms was Manic Soulcaster is not even good in Reno Mage until people started playing Reno decks, and then it became good. Because initially, the metagame was very much about all aggression. You had like Aggro Shaman, Aggro Warrior, and you just wanted to rush people down. And you felt like Manic Soulcaster, even though it was a spider tank when you faced off against aggro, what does Spider Tank really stop? It's never really stopped aggression when you're dead on turn 5. So in that context, really, you know, the card didn't make much sense. But now that more people are gravitating towards Reno Warlock, Reno Mage mirror matches, and you've got even Reno Priest, Dragon Priest kind of sprinkling themselves in, suddenly I think that card is just perfect fit.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think you know, Manic Soulcaster feels a little bit like an Elise Starseeker type of tech,
exactly.
where it doesn't really win you most percentages, but just having that one in card means that against other control decks, you have a really strong chance because you can attach it to your Reno Jackson in a very pinch scenarios, which is not really that common because you really mainly use it for Kazakis.
Right.
But you can also attach it to whatever else you need. Say you used Antonitis, but it was like kind of you have like no spells, but you need to develop tempo. You can just play that and that. You can get another Ink Master if you have like a handful of spells. You only have a few cards left. It's one of those really interesting things where it has a lot of late game potential. Or against aggro, it's a 3/4 for 3 mana, which helps you trade pretty well against most of the things because 3 health is like the pinching point for a lot of aggressive decks right now.
Right, that's where you're like stopping. If you look at Kor'kron Elite, like with the exception of something like Frothing Berserker, where it's like at the very top end of the health count. So I feel like the card is like inverse to Kabbalah's Dome in terms of evaluation. Initially, people included Kabbalah's Dome in every Reno Mage. And then they just cut it out. Yeah, in the very first iterations that I saw, it was just like hyper value oriented, and Soulcaster didn't fit in. And then eventually, those cards ended up getting cut out, and we've seen a more cycle heavy Reno Mage build up.
Yeah, if there's one thing that I would kind of like to see more also in just decks in general, it's just like accounting for cards and how good they are relative to the aggressive meta. Because if patches is such a problem, really make sure that you have an answer to them, because 3 health is the key to killing them, but 2 attack is also like this is part of the reason why I think Dragon Priest I was never really high on, because 2 attack from Dragon Priest, which is what they have very early on with Twilight Whelp, the Worm Rest agent, and even if you have to like play Brand on curve, it just feels like so weak some of the times. I just felt like it didn't do anything against like small time Buccaneers and Totem Golems. When they start with that fast with like a weapon, you're just gonna get wrecked. But I'm starting to change my opinion on that a little bit. And you see people like Life Coach and JJ, sometimes they play like so anti-aggressive decks that it really makes a lot of sense to bring it into a tournament setting. But when you play like 5-deck Conquest, like in the best of 7 settings that we have, it feels like you can't really do that. So it's a little bit unfortunate. And
the more decks, the more difficult it is really to isolate them.
I think Conquest is a format that kind of scales poorly with more games that you add into the series, just by the nature of like how every deck has to be flattened a little bit more as opposed to more specialized, which is kind of what makes tournaments a little bit cooler, that you could see non-traditional decks.
I guess that's one thing that's interesting too. And I mean, the opening of the Last Hero Standing opened up also other tournaments to run it the way they feel like. But even in those games, like the more games you add in the Last Hero Standing format, for instance, you still see diversity and a lot of specialization of teching. I still feel like overall the way people have like built their lineup in the event up until the playoffs moment was very distinct. Like some people just brought Dragon Priest everywhere, just thought it was the best deck ever, and then other people just scoffed at it. And we don't have any Dragon Priest in the top 4 right now, like none.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a shame because I've been actually like I was kind of down on Dragon Priest prior to the tournament, and then all of a sudden like I saw people doing well, so then I started like playing Dragon Priest a little bit on my own, and I started playing on the European server, and I had a huge win streak, and I haven't really dropped the game since my first. I told you about my first game.
Yeah,
right?
the first.
I was so pumped last night, guys. I got so hyped. Okay, I was listening to my Spotify playlist, and I was like, just got out of the gym. And I was like, all right, I feel it was a good day of casting, good day of Hearthstone. I'm living the life, etc. Because they treat us really well with a good hotel. And I got so pumped to play Hearthstone. I don't know why. When you listen to like your playlist, sometimes you just
out of the
so
gym too, right?
Yeah, so I was like so hyped, and maybe it was the caffeine rush or something. But I was like, all right, I'm gonna queue up this game. I'm gonna wreck ladder, blah blah blah. Nothing's gonna stop me. And games were going. The first game was going so well. I was playing against Pirate Warrior, and I was playing Dragon Priest because I wanted to change my opinion on it. and I was at like 13 health, and I was like, there's no way I lose from this position, because he had no cards. No cards, no board. It's like the only way that he can win is if he gets Arcanite Reaper into Leroy Jenkins. That was literally the only cards combination that he did. And he got exactly those cards while emoting me the entire time. And I lost it, dude. I threw my pillow across the room. I was like, what floor am I? I'm on the 20th floor. I'll do it. You know, I was gonna add him on. I was adding him on my friends list.
Oh, wait, dude,
But,
I could throw you off my iPad, off the 20th floor. You're gonna feel it across the world.
Yeah. So I got frustrated, but I stuck with it, and I played like 10 more games, and I won them all, and I win streaked like crazy all the way up to rank 5 very easily.
I mean, it's interesting because I think Dragon Priest went through a phase early, like where people played it to counter Aggro Warrior, and because of the initial list all contained Dragonfire Potion, it really didn't work that well. Then as soon as you switched to double Nova, it just kind of made sense.
Well, I cut the Novas because I was like, well, I want to see how good like a Dragonfire Potion, because it's usually like one Nova, and the Dragonfire Potion was actually pretty decent because there was a significant amount of mid-range Shaman and there's a significant amount of rogues that I were playing against, and so like Dragonfire Potion was actually pretty cool. Not against Azure Drake, but like against the questing, conceal with gadgets, and I'm like, okay, I can actually kill it now.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I guess the mid-range Shaman we haven't seen any of, because Shaman's just banned in tournaments. We don't see any of it, unfortunately, unless somebody tries to make like a funky ban and just hopes to let them go through.
The moral of the story is, if you guys get really pumped and amped to play some Hearthstone, even if you hit the first bad beat, because seriously, man, that was because he had like 20 cards in his deck. To hit a runner. Do you understand the odds of that, Noxious? I want to calculate it right now. I don't have a calculator.
So let's go like 5% for the first card, 5% for the other one. So let's 5% of 5% would give you the odds, right?
Yeah, whatever that number is, which is really small.
0.4.
I think it's 1%.
1%.
It's like a fifth of the fifth, right? Or sorry, it's a fifth of the, or 1/20th of the 1/20th. I don't know, something like that.
Yeah, so
it's like less than 1%.
1 out of 400.
It was really low. You can stick with it because bad beats are bad beats, and just keep sticking with Hearthstone and playing those games. But man, it was so hard. No, you guys were all out at the bars, hanging out, having fun, and I was in my hotel room, crying rivers of tears in Changzhou, China. I never felt so alone.
You should have hit me up for that. I would have come and helped you.
I was crawling into a fetal position, rocking myself to sleep. You know, just wrapping myself bare naked in the curtains. Just, no one loves me. Why have you forsaken me, God?
Well,
Ben Brode, what have I done to deserve this?
That's why you switched to Shaman and never looked back.
I mean, I had a Shaman quest too, but I was above that.
Okay.
For one day.
You replaced it?
For one day, I was above that, and I played Dragon Priest. And
I like the way you think.
And it was good. It was good.
All right.
So it looks like all the administrative issues were taken care of. Looks like we got Orange back into the booth. And we're going to game number 6 here. Staz up against Orange is going to take the Reno Mage, his last and final obstacle to win $150,000. And remember, Staz has had a lot of roadblocks in his Hearthstone career. If you guys missed the very beginning, we were talking about how Staz got 3 qualifications to a Hearthstone Championship Tour over the course of 2 years. One at the end of 2015, and then 2 seasons in 2016. But twice he was denied a visa. So he's actually one of the best players APAC has to offer, but he's never been able to show it too often on the big world stage.
Well, it's nice to see that at least he might be rewarded for his efforts, that is, in the event. But now the Reno Mage is going to get 2 shots at this. One of them is a mirror match that will come up after this one if Orange wins with the Jade Druid. This is a matchup where Orange is probably happy to be positioned here. I mean, he's got the Jade Druid, he's opening up with Jade Idol, starts to buffer up the golems, and it's really difficult for the Mage, given that he's only got 1 Blizzard, 1 Flame Strike, to deal with wave upon wave of Jade Golems. So he looks to close out the game as early as possible, but Feral Rage can help stop that. Druid just has the tools to stop Reno Mage's game plan from being executed.
Yeah, well, this is a really good start for Orange. He ramped twice over. He ramped with his Jade Idol, and he ramped with his Wild Growth. You kind of don't necessarily want to always have the Jade Idol in your opening hand, but if you have it, you might as well play it. And please, for the love of God, all the Jade Druids out there, I still see you guys doing it. I saw it happen earlier today, and I called it out to D2 next to me. Do not play shuffled 3 copies of Jade Idol into your deck in the very first turn. Because even though infinite Jade Idols seem good hypothetically, you want that towards the end. Yeah. If you shuffle Jade Idols and all you draw are Jade Idols going forth, you're going to have a bad time because you're going to run out of resources really quick.
Yeah, Nourish is really the card that carries that deck, honestly. Like, without Nourish as a card engine in that deck, it would really struggle to stay alive. Even against Reno decks, it would just not be able to do it. If you gave it only Jade Idols, it would still starve at some point for having a lack of removal and only big minions to play. So Yeah, stop shuffling.
All right, so Orange hits pretty much the ideal Jade curve here. He hit Wild Growth into Jade Blossom. The only thing that he's kind of concerned about would be card resources, but he has Nourish, so I feel like he's in a really good position. The way that Reno Mage can win this matchup is one of two ways. Either you get really aggressive on the board, similar to what we saw Reno Warlock do, like they're able to win the board and kind of force Jade Druid to be in a defensive position. Or the second way is to go for like an Alex Straza 2-turn burn combo. But that's kind of unlikely, usually, because you have to draw so much of your deck, and Jade Druid is usually the one kind of pressuring you in the mid stages of the game.
Yeah, and they'll keep molds for the right time. They'll try to use the Fel Rage at the right time. Either it's for lethal, or it's to kill, or it's to stay alive after they expect the burn. Because most Reno Mage lists nowadays just really rely on that burn to close out the game, as opposed to minion pressure. After all the experimentation's done, this is what we settled on, and Druid is able to muster some defense against the spell-based aggression, so...
Yeah. That is definitely something that Staz is keeping in mind as he chooses to line up this Doomsayer into the Water Elemental. And, I mean, Staz is the guy to focus on for this game because he needs to be the one making the plays to put the pressure on. Orange, his game plan is set. The longer the game goes, the more he's favored because he's just going to build up huge minions that Mage can't AoE down. Because Flame Strike is a great card. It's so maddening to see it being played against you in Arena, but it's not going to do anything against 10-10 and 11-11 minions.
All right, so Orange opts to cycle here, probably putting the Water Elemental right in range of Azure Drake. So it's either forcing Staz to use another card in the Water Elemental to clean this up, so Frostbolt or Forgotten Torch to the ping. And it still leaves the Water Elemental in a position where it's going to die to the follow-up spell. So Orange here making kind of an in-between play. Didn't have to go all in at all. He's got the Gadget's Hand in hand. All he's looking for is a good window of opportunity to start just drawing an extremely high amount of cards.
Yeah, so he has up to 10 mana this turn that he can utilize, which gives him the ability to Gadget Sand, Innervate, Wrath, and Living Roots, and Jade Idol. But it's a little bit premature to Jade Idol. And again, we're talking about how you don't want to go off too early because it dilutes your deck too much. You want to be hitting more powerful stuff like Brand plus Jade Spirit or Brand plus Jade Behemoth or Aya Blackpaw. These are like the really powerful things in your deck that you want to acquire before playing Gadget Sand Auctioneer and all these things. So while he has access to it, I'm totally in favor of him. Oh, is he going to...
Just waiting,
just
right?
Summon it? Okay. No,
I
he's actually not going to go for the infinite. Like, he just summons Jade Idol.
That's interesting. I really thought he would want to go for the long term, but I guess at this point, he's looking at his hand, and it's actually nearly perfect in terms of cycle for turn 10, because you do get the Gadget Sand with Wild Growth, which is actually 2 card draws if you account for excess mana, and then you've got the spells for damage.
Right.
But I really anticipated there would be a shuffle at some point. He's just looking at the rest of his deck, and how many cards are left, and he feels like there's never going to be a point where fatigue is reached, and that infinity is going to matter too much.
Yeah, that's really interesting to me that he chose to play the Jade Idol because, like you said, he has the ability to have that god draw of like cycling a bunch of stuff with Gadget Sand Auctioneer and being able to play Jade Idols while shuffling cards. And you know, I kind of liked playing the Ancient of War a lot, but playing the Jade Idol too means that Orange feels like his tempo needs to be established now. And I think it's because if you look at what Staz's hand has, he had like a lot of cards. So if Orange felt like his opponent would polymorph and develop onto the board, he'd fall too far behind, and then he'd be back in the same position as the previous game, where the Reno Mage was too far ahead on the board for him to actually get his Jade Trains going.
Yeah, and speaking of ahead on the board, you see here the Manic Soulcaster not being used for value purposes, like, you know, Kazakus or Reno. Just, I want to get a 3-4 down to contest the 5-10 and the 3-3 that are ahead of me. Because I've got the Firelance Portal for the following turn. I can use the Flame Lance at some point to complement some of the damage that I'll be sprinkling over these minions over the next few turns. So just Staz making sure that he's got something on the board to make the Druid pause a little bit.
All right, so let's see what this guy's can draw. It's the only minion in his hand, so he's kind of forced to play it. Mulch, not exactly the most applicable here, but he has a swipe opportunity. I would also like to see him consider cycling a Wrath here instead of using the swipe. But swipe is the most clunky mana usage, and you can keep that Wrath for cycle anyways. But, you know, we're talking about how you really need to make sure that you have card resources into your hand. And that's part of the reason why, you know, this Gadget Sand is so strong, because it helps you cycle so much and get your card draw resources. Like, basically change all these, like, bad spells into actual substantial minions.
Yeah, but I think when you've thrown away the second Jade Idol for the purpose of pumping the Golem, you're really not too worried about what's going to happen with your Gadsden Auctioneer, because its biggest purpose oftentimes is to get the infinite engine going towards the end of the game. Whereas in this case, it's mostly going to be just a way to cycle, and that's a...
Whoa! That's a Grime Street Enforcer, which buffs every minion in your hand by +1/+1 at the end of your turn. And that card will make Dirty Rat a 3/7, Reno 5/7. Yeah, why not? Sure.
It could matter a lot. These little edges in terms of health count against Druid are very difficult to handle. Like a 3/7 Dirty Rat is a lot more tough to manage than a 2/6 if you're a Druid trying to find a ping here and there.
Yeah, I don't know if it'll be game deciding, but it's definitely something that Orange wasn't expecting. I don't think Staz was expecting it either. And maybe those extra stat points make the difference in terms of trading on board.
All right, so now Orange is considering, going all in, just going for the Fandral, going for the Wrath for the cycle, and then with Jade Spirit starting to pump up more Jade Golems and drawing into, I have Black Ball, the Jade Behemoth, another Jade Spirit. There's still a lot of Jade Golem cards left in the deck that he's going to be reaching the 10/10 count at some point.
I'm actually a big fan of the way Orange has been playing this. Orange could have taken the very passive line, but he's actually done the exact opposite of taking the proactive line to not give Reno Mage an opportunity to seize the board. And not have to be reliant on huge Jade idols at all. It feels like he's just kind of playing a mid-range Druid with featuring some Jade cards. Like, if you look at mid-range Shaman, the highest that their Jades get is like 4/4, 5/5. The highest that this Jade Druid's gotten is 4/4, and it's because he's completely changed his game plan. And that is a sign of a really strong player, to be able to pivot your strategy to make sure to get the win in the opportune moments. Because, yeah, everyone can win with an ideal line, but he's trying to make sure to win with the resource that he has right now.
Yeah, I really like this too. It's preventing giving the mage the ability to get that Frost Nova, that Blizzard, that Flame Strike, to get the setup board clear at some point. It's a little bit weaker to it, but you're also letting the mage draw a lot less of his deck. So there's not too much to answer the 5/10. There's no polymorph, so that means your Fandral will probably be safe from anything barring the the whole Blizzard spam with Flame Strike as a follow-up. I really like Orange's line. Staz, on the other hand, is looking at his hand, and Kabbalah's Tome clogging it a bit here, just hovered over what feels like a dead draw.
Yeah, you know what? He might feel like he needs to get Frost Nova, so that way he can play Reno Frost Nova next turn. Again, dump a card so that way he can draw it. But right now, he's just going to pray that he gets some kind of freeze, AoE freeze, like pretty much just Frost Nova, because if he plays Reno, there's still a ton of power on the board. There's 16 damage, which is represented there. And it's not going to slow down if Orange chooses to even put another minion onto the board here.
Could play the Jade Blossom to get the extra Golem as opposed to wasting it with Jade Behemoth, because you would not get, I think, the extra Jade Golem onto the board in this spot.
Yeah, the problem with playing Jade Behemoth in this position is there's 6 minions already, so you wouldn't actually summon the other one. Unless you want to be cute and, like, mulch your own 1/1. Make him overdraw and then play Jade Behemoth, but I think that's, like, overkill.
It's pretty cute, though.
Yeah. Here's another important thing, too. Orange is popping the ice block when Staz... Because one thing that you are afraid of, if your opponent's like playing this passive, is an Alexstrasza burn kill. But he's popping the ice block, so if Staz had the Alexstrasza, he would have to choose between Alexstrasza and die, or freezing and being defensive.
Bad deal.
So usually, Druid in this position, if the ice block isn't popped, they're actually really scared. But even if that was the case, Orange has 2 Feral Rages with 16 armor to gain. So he's in a dominant position. I don't really think there's a way for him to lose a game from this spot.
Yeah, Reno Jackson will stall for perhaps a turn. I'm not even sure based on the amount of damage that we see in hand with a double Feral Rage swipe. I think that's just it no matter what.
Yeah, I mean, he's gonna Reno. And let's count how much damage again that Orange has. There's 10, 15, 16, 21.
There's 33 total, so he's going to be a little bit off given the 3 7s on the board. If you mulch it, though, I think that's going to represent enough to get the Feral Rage and the swipe in to finish off.
5, 15.
18 plus 6, 21. You're going to be a little bit shy. It's going to be 1 off, I believe. Unless I'm wrong.
Yeah, I mean, looks like he's got 8 damage from the hand. And 21 on board, and if he mulches, he can't really do all those things. Unless Excess Mana gets Innervate. That would be the
If excess mana gets Innervate, that's the hero power on top of everything that's going to win the game. I mean, you still push anyway, because you've already seen Manic Soulcaster, Reno, even if it were to be shuffled in, it would be a 1-in, very, very, very low chance. So at this point, it's just a matter of making sure you're doing it in the most efficient manner so as to not waste resources. Because again, he wins the long game. Aya Black Ball's not been seen, Jade Behemoth's not been seen. He's got all the time in the world to get this damage in.
Well, one thing that's a little bit concerning is that Orange's board is very full. And if Staz found some way to freeze the board, he doesn't actually have a lethal from hand. Still nothing, though. How good is a Flame Strike in this spot with Thalnos? It's just a little bit off. Too much health on everything.
Yeah, this is where you have to ping your Thalnos for that Nova.
Yeah,
or you could
Drake.
You know, that's
Nova
probably
seems
a little bit more
better.
logical than pinging your own Thalnos. Okay, he's going to go for the Flame Strike and hope that he lives.
Yeah, he can remove most of the damage off the board, but he's still just going to die from the hand because there's 8 damage waiting from Feral Rage. And, you know, Staz, he actually did stabilize, all things considering. Druid's kind of out of resources, too, after the Brand Bronzebeard and Jade Behemoth. So, and there's like Pyroblast and Flameland, so there was like this world where Staz actually just stabilized versus Orange, but Orange just barely enough able to survive. And there's that Innervate that he was missing
on the
previous
top
turn.
was the next draw in the deck coming right up. Feral Rage and the Remnant of the Jade Behemoth are going to do it, and it's going to tie up the series 3-3 in the Grand Finals. Now that's where everything lies. The mirror match, Reno Mage. I'm not even surprised, and honestly, I'm kind of excited because that's the flagship deck for the event where it's just been non-stop. Everybody brought Reno Mage.
Yeah, Reno Mage is probably the most ubiquitous deck in the tournament. People are looking at Shaman, people looking at Pirate Warrior, even Rogue. Those were less common than Reno Mage. Everyone pretty much brought Reno Mage, but some people chose not to bring Shaman into their lineups. Worked out for only a couple people. I think most of the people who didn't bring Shaman actually lost, but there was a couple of individuals that snuck into the top 12.
All right, onwards to the last game. This is match point, tournament point for these guys. $80,000. The difference between second place and first place.
All right, so wow, already a difference in ideology. So Orange chose to keep Reno, and Staz chose to throw it away. One thing that's also a little bit interesting to me as well is sometimes when you see that you have Alex Straz in the hand, and you have like some opportunities to have early games, sometimes people keep Alex Straz as well to put the pressure on. Think of it very similar to the Freeze Mage mirror, but I feel like it's less important in this matchup because you do have so many minions that you can play, so it's not nearly as important.
Okay, this is very interesting. The Babbling Book was held by Staz on turn 1. He chose to keep it in his hand instead of developing it, indicating that he wants to play it later in the game with Brand Bronzebeard for maximum value. It's very much in line with his ideology of Kabbalist Tome being included in the list.
I think he might play it this turn. Oh wait, never mind. He has Cabal Courier. It's a little bit better. The thing about Babbling Book is that if you play it this turn, you actually force your opponent to hero power it on 3. So they're a little bit inefficient, and that gives you initiative on 4 mana.
With the Elemental?
Yeah. Because if you like force your opponent to ping, and I put that in quotation marks because they can just do something else besides ping a 1/1, then you get the ability to play on the curve with 4 mana and above. And Staz, that matters a lot because remember we talked about 3 ways that this matchup can go towards. It can be either one person's aggressive, both people are aggressive, or both players are passive.
Right.
And usually if you're just being aggressive, and if you're being aggressive in any of the situations and you get to be the one proactive about it, then you're going to be in a good spot. Because that's pretty much the only advantage you have going first in this matchup, is that you get to play your threats first. They get more coin, they get a coin, they get more cards, they get the ability to have more options, and that's always like really scary in a control mirror.
Yeah, Orange missed out on the Water Elemental for mirror entity value, but it's not something you would necessarily throw this early in the game. It was just an opportunity instead of developing the Ice Block.
Yeah, and you know, interestingly enough, you know, the Babbling Book gave Orange a mirror entity, which is bad against Babbling Book, which is what Staz
has in hand.
I don't think that was the intention, but that ends up being like something really fortuitous for Staz.
Yeah. It's actually brilliant now. He looks like a genius.
Ooh, okay. Well, I mean, right now he tested for Ice Block or Ice Barrier and Vaporize. Right now, there's a lot of things it could be. It could be Counterspell, it could be Spellbender, it could be Mirror Entity. It also could be
Potion of Polymorph.
Potion of Polymorph, which is a card that not a lot of people play around. And if that is the case, then that's all the more reason to play Babbling Book.
You do play around 2 cards at once by playing Babbling Book, which again is one of the best deals you're going to get against Mage. Kabbalah's Tome running into Counterspell would be a disaster.
Ooh, okay.
Woo!
He says it's unlikely his opponent has it.
Oh, infinite Kabbalah's Tome dream is real.
So, I mean, he has the Antonitis, sorry, not the Antonitis, the Emperor Thorsan in the hand. So he wants to play Kabbalah's Tome to get as much discount value as possible. And now that he's proactive and Orange has been so passive, he can actually get away with this. I was talking about how Kabbalah's Tome is like rarely good in this matchup, but in this specific instance, it's actually really good because you have so much more card resources and you have initiative. Orange is just stuck having to remove this really annoying 3/6.
Yeah, Water Elemental is just a really miserable minion to remove because Fireball is one of the easy answers you have in your deck. Flame Lance as well if you're holding it. Forbidden Flame could do it, but it's a very expensive card to use on this Water Elemental right now. When you can just develop a little bit of a board and maybe force your opponent to trade into it.
It looks like he's setting up for a Firelance Portal over 2 turns.
Or just the coin, maybe. There could be a coin, Inkmaster Solia, Firelance Portal.
Yep.
As a very heavy tempo play.
And that's going to have to go towards the Emperor Thorsan. I mean, oh, we forgot about Mirror Entity.
That's a scary minion right there.
We forgot about it too. We're talking about how Staz was setting up for this Emperor, and then he didn't play around Mirror Entity because he was talking about the odds of things. And you know, also
he
another
was
thing
thinking about the odds for sure.
I think.
Even Potion of Polymorph.
He just kind of forgot about that possibility.
This must have been a mistake, right? Because once you've eliminated everything but Spellbender and the 2 Seekers that trigger on play, the only thing left really is like a 66% chance to be a disaster for you.
Yeah, very, very costly error. It's not game ending by any means, but all of a sudden, Orange is the one's going to be able to flip initiative because that Mirror Entity went 2 for 1 that he got for free off of the Babbling Book. So resource-wise, he's not that far behind, but one thing's for certain, Staz is going to be able to continue this resource push.
Oh my goodness, another resource acquisition card. The Fellfire Potion he got from Cabal Courier earlier, though, gives him insurance against the potential copy of the Emperor Thorsan. So, you know what? Staz just had this under lockdown.
Yeah, I mean, like we said, that his resource count was perfectly fine, but he gave up his ability to be the aggressor.
Right.
And it's not necessarily the fact that, like, right now the board is even state, but he could be the one pressing damage. He could be the one threatening to kill because he has, like, a Pyroblast in hand. And what's important is that 2 things happen. Either one, Orange has the Reno, and he has to Reno early before you use Alexstrasza, which puts you in a dominant position for the rest of the game. Or the second thing, he doesn't have Reno, and you just
win the game,
threaten to win the game and win the series. And this game, not to add too much pressure to the players, they can't hear us anyways, is the fact that it's worth $80,000. If you win this Reno Mage Mirror, you have $80,000 in your bank account whenever it gets to you.
Whenever it gets to you.
Wherever it is.
Welcome to China.
In parentheses, of course.
Okay, Effigy, not too big of a card you're getting from Babbling Book in that spot. Had the choice to develop the Ice Block, but again, going back to the aggressor point, just wants to get onto this board and put Orange on the back foot, having to use his AoE early and inefficiently as much as he can. All right, so do we start with the Acolyte Ping?
Yeah, Acolyte
reasonable.
was a pretty good draw here from Orange. He doesn't actually have a lot of resources right now, and you know, the fact that Staz has a Cabbal's Tome means that Orange has to dig deeper into his deck, so he's ahead in the fatigue plan. So he's running out of ways that he can fight in the slow battles. He has to really figure out a way to grab initiative, but his hand is all very defensive. And Manic Soulcaster is a value card, but he's not going to really want to play on an Acolyte of Pain. If he gets his Kazakis, he can do the Manic Soulcaster on that. If he gets, you know, his Alexstrasza, he can be aggressive. But right now, Orange is just a sitting duck.
Staz is looking at a hand full of flexibility, but a lot of it isn't really too meaningful at the moment. So, I mean, there's always the develop secrets line of play, which is just dump your hand for the most part. Effigy with the Archmage could be relevant in the next few turns as well.
Yeah, you know, as much as Staz's hand looks very fancy,
Yeah.
it's pretty much has no substance. It's just kind of like potpourri, just all
It does nothing.
flower petals just sitting there. Because you have like Flame Lance, that's not useful. Volcanic Potion isn't useful. This actually might be the best play. To play Volcanic Potion, play like a Refreshment Vendor, and like a Secret. That's like pretty much the best that he has. And is that all you got for 8 mana? That feels kind of weak. So Staz is not exactly, you know, in the super down position. I wouldn't even blame him for playing a Kabbalist Tome and then
With
playing a
Ice Block?
Secret right now.
I wouldn't mind Ice Block and Kabbalist Tome. Yeah, that seems reasonable. That definitely does seem reasonable given the fact that he's got nothing else to do this turn. Unless he wants to play the Refreshment Vendor alongside this, or the double Secret play. He's going to go for Vaporize? Okay, so it's just developing Secrets this turn. Interesting.
So the Secrets kind of mess with Orange, but more importantly, I think he's going to try to set up for an Archmage turn next on this following turn. Because if he plays Archmage into the Effigy, it kind of makes it a really hard position for Orange to deal with it. He either has to have Polymorph, or he just has to accept the fact that a 7-mana minion comes out, which the average stat line is a 6/6. So it's going to be really difficult to deal with that.
Yeah, and Orange is also going to be worried about Spellbender whenever the Archmage comes out. Even if he has one answer, he might feel like he needs 2 at the end of the day.
We're talking about infinite value chains. It's like Cabbal's Tome gets a Cabbal's Tome, a Cabal Courier discovers a Cabal Courier. And Cabal Courier is actually like a card that you can use as a backup for Bran, because a lot of people talk about the ideal scenario of Bran Bronzebeard with Kazakis. But sometimes Bran Bronzebeard and Cabal Courier can be just as good.
And it can sometimes get you a Kazakis.
Which can also get you Kazakis. You're right.
Yeah, it's happened. One of the things that's kind of on Orange's mind that is right now is I was considering maybe, you know, once you see these 2 Secrets, you've tested for Ice Block, and you assume there's an Ice Block somewhere in there. You've tested for Mirror Entity, you've tested for a spell. Now, one of the questions that is left is, you know, is there a big minion that's going to be coming out? And if so, if Spellbender's around, then wasn't Powered Shield an option? You know, you had to consider it a little bit. Maybe you trigger that with a dummy spell.
Well, all those questions are asked, but we will tackle them some other time. For now, I think Staz, he was setting up for the Antonitis this turn. If he Antonitis and pings, he doesn't get the value off the Archmage Antonitis. But it's more importantly, like Staz developed the Vaporize, and Vaporize is just going to do like nothing against this.
Yeah.
Vaporize was pretty much like a 2-mana deal 2 damage, you know? It wasn't really anything. So instead of just worrying about what Vaporize is going to get, he's just going to play Antonitis, kind of force his effigy scenario. And Orange knows that Cabbal's Tome was played, so if this ends up being the case, he has to be careful of 2 things. He has to be careful of spell manipulation, like Spellbender and Counterspell, and he has to be careful about effigy. So that's the sequence that he has to be mindful of.
He's tested for Counterspell, but has not tested for the Spellbender, so that could really put him on the back foot. If he starts with Fireball, he still maintains enough mana to play Forbidden Flame to then kill the Archmage in the case of Spellbender, so that seems like the most reasonable line of play no matter what. And the fact that the spell damage is on the Blood Mage was really essential. And that draw, we didn't really emphasize it, but it was a big deal.
Well, he does manage to have a Forbidden Flame, excuse me, to trade into this this Valen. And you know what? He also draws a card and diffuses yet another Secret. Orange has once again been able to diffuse the aggression from Staz.
Oof,
and
that was
all
very
Staz
scary.
has is kind of a couple minions, which are easy to deal with, and he's got some burn. So it's not like Staz has some power plays with ending the game.
To be honest with you, being in Orange's seat right now, that Secret turn would have been one of the most stressful things because it was game-ending if one of these Secrets was the wrong one.
I wonder if Orange feels like this is warranting a Flame Strike. He managed to pick up Polymorph, which would have been good the previous turn, but doesn't really need it anymore. Flame Strike ping takes your entire turn. You're giving initiative once again to your opponent. And it is also one of your more powerful AoEs. So it's definitely not ideal, but I'm not seeing something else that's just as clean to remove this board.
Yeah, I like the Flame Strike here. Again, it's one of those things where Reno Mage is not known for its ability to flood the board, less so after you've seen the Water Elemental, which is the biggest minion in the deck aside from some of the top heavy stuff. And Archmage is gone. There is, you know, what's her name? Alex Straza as well left in the deck, so you're really not looking at too many minions coming out.
Another Kabbalist Tome discovers another Fireball, so there's more damage, but that's where the gravy train ends for now. Kabbalist Tome, no more Kabbalist Tome Infinite Chains. But now Staz has another option. He can start going for burning his opponent in a couple turns here. Right now, it's a little bit hard to justify burning your opponent this much because he might have Reno Jackson and you waste your damage. But he's got 2 Fireballs, a Forgotten Torch, and a Pyroblast. That alone is 22 damage over the course of 3 turns.
Yeah, and this Pyroblast was from the Kabbalah Stone #1, right? So if there were another one in the list, which we know there isn't, that would have been a reason to probably start burning. However, with limited burn, it's a little bit more difficult to justify.
So there's a problem with burning is that your opponent has played neither Alex Straza nor Reno Jackson. So you have to be really careful about that if you just overextend too much into the burn category. Orange plays the Cabal Courier. Spawn of Shadows, we've seen that being picked a couple times, and I don't think it worked out that well. Spellbender actually is kind of useful because there's a lot of target plays. So if the instance where you can set up Spellbender when you anticipate him playing a Pyroblast, you might actually be able to gain 10 life from that.
Yeah, well, because it really, I think it stops on minions, right? So it would have to be something you want to protect, like Archmage
You're
Antonidas.
right. I for some reason thought Spellbender targeted.
That would be so awesome, though. Can you
that
imagine
would make that card good?
Next expansion. Oh, man. Power creep.
I apologize. Yeah, I misspoke.
It's okay.
But still, if he plays Reno and Spellbender, for example.
Yeah,
that's
exactly. Like,
useful.
you're protected, and then maybe you can shuffle it in with Manic Soulcaster on the following turn. Just, like, set up some decent protective plays with the Spellbender in that deck.
Yeah, in this scenario, if Staz chooses to go for a burn plan, I mean, he has a Kazakus that he can pick up, but if he chooses to burn as a follow-up, Orange can actually play Manic Soulcaster with Reno, and that's one of the instances where, you know, you really want to get more heal into your deck because your opponent's very clearly trying to kill you. Staz, you know, what's the most clever way of setting this up? If you Fireball once, you could be drawing into the burn, but you don't actually have the guarantee. If you Pyroblast, you just wasted 10 damage. Kazakus feels like the safest middle-of-the-road play.
But it's such a bummer to throw it out without Bran, right, in the matchup, given how much value. Number one, your deck is value-oriented. He's played 2 Kabbalah Stones, and his hand looks nothing like a hand you'd want.
Okay, so he says, I have to go for this, and Orange has the Reno, but he also has the Manic Soulcaster, and I think that's going to actually put Orange in a position where he can win. All of a sudden, for the first time in this matchup, I see an outcome where Orange can potentially win because Staz has just more follow-up burn, and he just used the Pyroblast. That's a lot of damage wasted.
Yeah, he's also picked up the Azure Drake to make sure he gets to his second Reno before the Ice Block is popped, assuming this hand is filled with nothing but Fireballs and Forgotten Torches and Roaring Torches coming off the top. Orange, in the worst-case scenario, still has something to do here. Now, he's got to assume that there's a Fireball in the opponent's hand. He knows that from the Archmage Antonidas, so he knows his block is popped if there's no Reno this turn.
One thing that's kind of actually a problem, though, going forward is that this game might go down to fatigue, and we're talking about how the matchup kind of doesn't go to fatigue that often, but in the cases that it does, Ice Block is kind of useless. Yeah. So, you know, exhausting your Ice Block is also a valuable strategy. I think Orange was kind of wondering if there was a possibility he can let his Ice Block be popped and then play Reno, use this turn to potentially develop onto the board instead. I think this is definitely the safest course of action, though, because you also develop 7 power on the board. And now, with 9 on the board, Staz actually kind of has to treat this very seriously because his burn option has just been exhausted.
Yeah, he's looking at 2 Fireballs, and that is it. With the Frostbolt at the top of it, it's not remotely close to 30 damage. He would still need to find Alex Straza off the top to put Orange in danger zone. So Staz probably considering his Flame Strike Frostbolt as a board clear. There's the Flame Lance, which also mitigates a decent chunk of what's on the board. I'm not sure how I feel.
I mean, I think Forbidden Flame's the most clunky card, so I'd also be in favor of just tossing that out and just killing Reno with Forbidden Flame.
Sure.
You've already used Antonidas, so it's not like Forbidden Flame can get you a 0-mana Fireball as well. And Frostbolt actually has use in burning the face, or stalling on the board, or comboing with Ice Lance if you have it.
Double Fireball and Frostbolt after an Alex Straza would indeed just pop the Ice Block, setting you up for perhaps a Kazakus Potion to clean up the game. So yeah, Forbidden Flame seems to be the clunkier of the 2 cards.
If you want to be fancy, you ping and you Forbidden Flame.
And you wait.
Well, it's like if you want to be fancy, you just ping, and then so you have exact mana, exact damage. Alex Straza comes into the hand. Oh my goodness, Orange has that opportunity to finally be aggressive. We're talking about how he's been such a defensive posture this entire game. He draws a card that lets him be aggressive, and the thing is, Staz hasn't played his Reno Jackson, so he has to account for what happens if I play Alexstrasza and he plays Reno and I have to start all the way back from 30. But the other side of it is if I play Alexstrasza and I do get to, he doesn't have Reno, what position am I in?
Yeah, the thing is, if he has Reno and Polymorphs, and Alexstrasza threat is defused, so you really are set back to 30, right? And that's not something you necessarily want. You haven't shuffled in the the Roaring Torch, so the burn is kind of far away. No good minion presence to replenish this, so I like the decision to play it a little bit more cautiously and slowly.
Yeah, and right now, you look at Staz's position, he almost feels like he has to Reno even if he had it, but he doesn't. So now he has to go back to the drawing board here. That Forbidden Flame is actually pretty useful in this situation, but he also might just consider playing Kazakus and Manic Soulcaster, taking his bets. The hard thing is that if you play Kazakus and the Manic Soulcaster, you're leaving up the Azure Drake, so you might be leaving yourself vulnerable to an Ice Block pop. So I don't think he wants that either.
A disaster play would be Flamelance, because now he's got no more mana to kill the Drake.
Oh, well, he can Frostbolt it, so that
and then
stalls.
Forbidden Flame? I guess you could do both.
Yeah, and that's a fantastic use of Spellbender there. Just like a seemingly innocuous minion, and you play a secret, doesn't seem like that big of a deal. And looks like Staz, when he first tested for Effigy, he was just trying to keep his options open, but now he has to deal with whatever plays that Orange has. Orange picks up Blizzard. That's not that useful, though.
Yeah, you've used the Flame Strike earlier. Didn't value AoE too much. It didn't go up in value, if anything. Volcanic Potion was sitting there unused. So you're really looking at your burn as the source of the win here. There is still the Kazakus in the deck, the Brand Bronzebeard alongside it. So both players waiting to get max value or set up a kill that's not going to be stopped.
Oh, Orange, he's going for the win. He's going to Pyroblast immediately. And I love this play because if Staz has Reno, he has to use it. Sure, that's a top deck Reno. That's great and all, but Orange has to follow up Alexstrasza. And that allows him to effectively negate every single heal and hopefully put him back in the driver's seat when he has Forgotten Torch and Frostbolt in hand. He needs to pick up a little bit more damage. I think the moment Orange is able to pick up the Antonidas, that puts him in a pretty advantageous situation. But Staz, he also has a lot of value, so if he's able to withstand this pressure...
I like this a lot. I like Staz saying, you know what, I know what you're trying to do here. I have a second Ice Block. I'm going to exhaust this one, get another Kazakus in my deck, use the Reno after my first Ice Block, and then maybe replenish the second one. So he's going to buy himself all the time in the world to play around the Alexstrasza that's going to fit his health at 15. So I really like that line of play from Staz.
Yeah, actually, I didn't even consider this at all. I totally forgot about the second Ice Block.
Yeah.
You're 100% right, Noxious. Staz says, go ahead, pop my Ice Block. You think I care? I'm going to be able to play Reno and Ice Block again, and then I'm going to be the one gaining initiative against you. So this was actually a really good line here taken by Staz, something that I didn't consider.
Yeah, now Orange is trying to figure out, okay, so he wants me to pop the block, and then Reno, and then Alex. I think I can still win that way. The issue is now there's a board, so whenever I make any of the plays that I want, I'm leaving him with initiative on board, which is a little bit clunky for Orange in that spot.
Yeah, I'm looking at how good this could be of an Emperor hand. You discount Alexstrasza to 8 mana, which means that you can squeeze in Alexstrasza plus burn. I think more importantly, though, is Emperor discounts some of these spells so that if you pick Antonidas up, you can actually pick up multiple fireballs. Because right now, the thing that Orange's hand lacks is legitimate game-ending damage.
Yeah, and I think he's going to go with the ping route, where you just spend a lot of time pinging stuff.
Yeah.
To get a long-term game plan as opposed to trying to rush it. Because he's realizing right now, okay, my opponent doesn't seem stressed out at all by this Pyroblast.
Yep.
Not one bit.
So he pops the Ice Block. And this is going to force Staz to most likely Reno or play the Ice Block. He doesn't have to do both. Oh my goodness, 30 Rack can also be super impactful if it pulls the Alexstrasza.
Yeah, I like the Reno first and then the Ice Block on the following turn. But I guess if you're looking to play... No, I think Reno's always correct as the first play in that spot.
Reno's definitely the strongest because you go up to 30.
I mean,
follow-up plays aren't that strong because the thing about the 30 rat is if you pull out something super significant, even if you pull out Alexstrasza, it's still an 8/8 and you have to kill it.
Yeah, I like just developing the Ice Block even right now. There really isn't another line of play unless you want a Fireball phase, which frankly, I don't think you want to do right now.
And you know your opponent has another Reno. He actually Manic Soulcastered that. So there is that possibility of like you tossing Burn in, and then your opponent just, you kind of like, he kind of wants you to do that because he has Reno in the hand.
I mean, all of a sudden, Staz, with the second Ice Block, just completely shredded Orange's game plan.
For now.
Yeah, for the time being. And now we're still looking at him having the potion for Kazakus, which Orange doesn't have yet. And he's about to draw it based on the deck size. So, not too far off, but not quite there.
I mean, does this stop Orange from playing Alexstrasza? Looks like he's choosing to instead try to get the Doomsayer to activate and then get a clean Alexstrasza turn. He knows that this is unlikely to go off, but in case it does, he has an Alexstrasza initiative. But look at the remaining deck size from Orange. The fact that Staz was able to get Cabal's Tome value over the course of the game has actually worked out in his benefit. And that Kazakus potion, I didn't actually see what it was.
10 armor and deal 8 damage, I believe.
Oh,
or, no,
boy,
it wasn't.
It pulls out Alex. That's a huge moment. Oh, my goodness. He pulled out the Alexstrasza, and Orange looks so stressed. He knows he is in dire straits. And Staz is okay with just letting it die because, or just passing.
Passing, yeah. Just passing is irrelevant. It doesn't matter. Like, one of the big things here is that his potion deals 6 damage in AoE and gives him armor. He's got control. He's winning the fatigue war, and that's the position he wanted to put himself into. Maybe the Cabal is Stone were the greatest idea yet.
It's a stroke of genius as far as I'm concerned. Staz can just ping, pass. All right, your move, Orange. Orange is also ahead in the fatigue because remember, Staz has been playing all these resources based off Cabal's Tome. Just look at the deck size difference. I mean, Orange's got less than 5 cards or less.
I think we're looking at Kazakus being the ticket to victory for Orange here, right?
Yeah, he needs to have some way, because now Staz can actually win through a different way. Staz can actually win through fatigue. He can actually just kind of play resource intensive, and rather than trying to toss in his burn to the face and his opponent Renos, he can actually just play really passive. Orange's last chance is drawing his Archmage Antonidas.
I think the other big deal, too, is that Staz doesn't have a second Reno, where Orange does, so he can go pretty deep into fatigue until, you know, it gets really dangerous with the fireballs going to face, and just get an extra turn. Okay.
So the Antonidas comes in hand, but the discounts aren't that great. Yeah. He's got the ability to make it 6-2 and 2. He can play Frost Nova and Roaring Torch. I think Orange is going to hold out for a little bit more. Says I probably have time because he's playing really passively.
Do we know if he has Ice Lance in the deck? That's one of the cards that is oftentimes included alongside Frostbolt in the burn version of the Reno Mage.
Orange has Ice Lance?
Yeah, I believe he does, but I wouldn't be able to. I wouldn't bet on it.
I would say that if he's holding out, then he probably does.
Yeah.
The fact that you can get 2 fireballs off Antonidas and you've already used an Arcane Blast kind of indicates that he has like another spell he wants to use, or maybe he just wants to discount as much cards as possible. That's a second Reno that comes to the hand from Orange, the one that he shuffled in with Manic Soulcaster. Choosing to pass again. Now we're coming on the turn where Staz has to dump a card because he has 10 cards in the hand. And that allows Orange to play Emperor plus Polymorph, for example.
That's got to be one of the better cards you're happy to dump. Develops a board, deals damage to the enemy's face. Oh, that's the Discover that is Jade Lotus Discover card.
That is Lotus Agent, a card that can discover anything from 3 classes.
Lotus Agent coming
Druid,
through.
Rogue, and Shaman. You have the Kazakus potion that can finally come to your hand here. Something that could be super impactful.
Still Bran in the deck, though. Do you really want to surrender this deep into fatigue where it might be the only chance for you to close out the game? Oh! Bran with Kazakus and double 1-cost potion with Archmage. Is that ever a thing?
That is a thing, but you know, I have to kind of like wonder how Orange has to sequence this because Ice Block is starting to get more useless as time goes on.
Yeah.
Because he's going to be taking fatigue damage, and fatigue goes right through it. So I kind of want to start getting a little bit aggressive here. But Orange choosing the passive line. If this works out for him, Orange is a genius. But for now, I'm still looking at Staz being the guy who's in a dominant position here.
He's got the Alex for the second Reno if things go wrong. But looking at the fatigue count, he's more than happy to let this happen over a long period of time. No rush on his side.
He has to dump a card.
Brand looks good. I mean, you've already used up the Reno and the Kazakus. Everything's gone. Just pitch it.
Is there a Cabal Courier? He drew that on turn 3.
Right.
Yeah, so Bran Bronzebeard actually might be a viable play. Thanos, the only reason why I'm not sure is that you actually dig deeper in your deck, and I don't think you want to give up your fatigue advantage. Yeah, just toss a Fireball, just put pressure on him. No need to rush it, I guess. And then Orange actually kind of wants his Ice Block to be popped in a sense, but not necessarily. Oh, okay, you know what? Actually, something to consider too is that keeping Thanos and Bran is an anti-Dirty Rat deck.
Yeah, I was just thinking about it. I'm
too.
like, why is he keeping Bran? Okay, now that makes sense.
So Orange's last card is Bran Bronzebeard, assuming that
yeah,
that's
that's what
the
it
card.
is. Yeah. I believe it is, but
That
if it
is really
isn't-
unfortunate. He's gonna Dirty Rat to try to pull Alex. He
Oh,
does!
he pulls it out.
Another huge moment. Both the Dirty Rats kind of fighting against the Dragon. Such valiant heroes.
This is unbelievable. And Staz even made the tech play
Oh
of
my
playing
goodness.
around it. Okay, now we're actually back on even field because the Reno will heal Orange to full health.
All right, so if I'm Staz, I know that he has Reno Jackson guaranteed. So tossing Burn-In is kind of useless. I think he has to have the discipline to just hero power past this turn. But if he chooses to remove it, well, the Dirty Rat's only going to do 2 damage, and his opponent's going to be officially fatigued starting next turn. So what you want to do is actually set up, so that way you deal, you put him down to 1.
Before the Ice Block is
So he
popped, right?
has to Reno.
Exactly, and then everything kind of goes in your favor because the Ice Block never matters in the end. Well,
Well, he doesn't get the chance to do that. Now Brandon Kazakas finally comes in the hand, and Orange is gonna try to double dip in value. What's he gonna pick? I mean, he has that chance for 1-mana potions, but he might need to use Superior Potion to get some armor.
10 armor
to
seems
get some
really
damage.
appealing. Yeah, damage, potions, demons, get Jiraxis in, go.
Actually, I think the number 1 card he's looking for right now is actually summon a huge board potentially as well.
To resurrect everything, but he's got a Doomsayer in there, so maybe not the most
Okay.
appealing thing. I
mean, 10 armor, 8 damage is a pretty good exchange.
That seems like the best potion he could have hoped for. Now he's going to get a second one. There is no way for Staz to put him at 10 health next turn, right? Between the burning, the roaring torch, and the fireball, it's not enough. I wonder if Orange ever goes 1 mana to get the armor because he has lost track of what spells were played, right?
Do you realistically have the time to play Superior Potion twice over?
I think
he
so.
chooses to, because I think he just wants to get something else. And it looks like he might have not gotten the option he needs to, but he's also running out of time. I didn't get to see what he chose.
Okay, now he's just praying that he didn't lose track of any spells, any of the spells that were
Okay.
played, that is, so his fatigue is not going to end up mattering.
So Staz has the opportunity to put him down to 3, and that's 2 off from lethal right now. If he had that Frostbolt, he'd be able to actually have lethal right now.
You mean the Frostbolt he used instead of the Forbidden Flame earlier in the game?
That one. I still think he can play the resource game, though. It's very clear that his opponent's just down to his last bits. But what's really scary is Staz no longer has that mass AoE. He used that Kazakus potion that deals 8 damage to everything, and in the event that Orange was able to put a huge board out, he'd be in trouble. So he might actually have to consider burning his opponent, but that also puts him in a bad position, too.
He lost the Alex. That is the cornerstone of his strategy was, you Reno second time, I Alexed you, you die to fatigue with my burn. In this spot, though, this is not looking good. Is he going to commit the Blood Mage Thalnos just to get the spell damage and good removal? Is that what's happening?
I mean, he gets Arcane Blast value by doing it, so he doesn't have to use Fireball. He can also just Polymorph, for example. Or he's using Forbidden Flames, using cards that are just not that impactful, but he's opening himself up to catching up in the fatigue plan. Although he's at least has 3 cards, so I didn't see that he was almost out of cards yet. Orange actually picked up summon 3 minions and gained 10 armor. That's actually exactly what he needed.
Yeah.
That's exactly what he needed.
But now the issue is if you get yourself armor, you leave Blood Mage up on the board, and if there's the Fireball from Archmage, another Fireball, that's a total of 14 damage that's being pushed right now. You're looking at 19 health. That's absurdly close to fatigue.
I like this a lot. Orange chooses to play Reno because it increases his chances that a good minion comes off the Resurrect. And so he needs that to die first. Staz picks up Doomsayer. He's on his second to last card, so he's catching up to fatigue. His second Kazakus comes in here. So he's going to finally be able to see if he can get something to fight on his own, and he's going to get 2 potions.
Well, that's what it was. 'Cause we were wondering what the brand was. The Manic Soul caster shuffled a second Kazakus earlier. Casters. Now, what does he need in that spot?
Oh,
Just
he picks
damage
so
to face?
fast. I think he picked damage. Did he? Was there damage available?
I didn't notice if there was damage. I saw AoE damage, I believe. The other option
I think
eludes
summoning
me,
minions is like the most powerful thing here, but then getting AoE is also big too. And what's scary is what is your potion? What is your opponent's potion is?
versus yours, yeah. Now, Archmage with the Frost Nova might be step 1 of this entire sequence.
Okay, well, Orange, I couldn't. I thought one of them said add 3 demons to your hand, which is a little bit sketchy to say the least.
Oh yeah, there it is.
No,
That's what it was.
It says summon an 8/8 demon, and you know what? Maybe Orange, by playing Reno, took a little bit too slow, and now doesn't really have the luxury of dealing with the board and getting to develop his board.
How do you feel about Archmage Nova? I mean, you are forcing 1 fireball away from your face.
It feels like, what are you going to do with that fireball? Because then you have 4 mana plus the 10 mana stuff.
Yeah.
This is exactly the spot that we were talking about, how having 2 Kazakus potions could be kind of detrimental to how you want to play your mana usage.
All right, let's get an 8/8 back onto this board. That's not bad. The 1/1 is not what you want to see, but the 8/8 is definitely one of the better options you could have had here. But, oh man, Staz just picks up.
Okay, so he's definitely got removal for this, and I feel like Staz is just going to count down the turns where he's going to win because he's got all the defense tools that he needs. He's got all the defense tools that he needs.
Yeah.
Now that he has 2 polymorphs, 2 fireballs, there's really nothing else he can lose to outside of that last Kazakus potion, and he has 1 nuke option that says transform everything into 1/1 sheeps, so that he should be able to be defensive against this huge board.
Two waves of armor gain and the ability to just kill everything. So I don't see a world in which Orange is able to put the counter pressure. What demons would Orange need to find to really change the tide of the game here?
I think Orange, look at the Emperor Thorazan just sitting in the hand, just unable to actually do anything. And it was able to get these fireballs, maybe he would be able to leverage something, but at the same time, you have to kind of look at Staz and said he built his Reno Mage to be favored in the long fatigue mirrors, and he's very comfortable playing it. Being able to drag it out this far long, and Orange might be out of opportunities here. He has this last Kazakus potion, 3 demons that could be really impactful. I'm talking about like Cruel, maybe Traxxas, but it has to be summoned as a 3/15 though.
Yeah, and right now, he's banking on these big legendaries to really win the game. I mean, Cruel on the back of 2 Doom Guards, maybe.
Yeah,
but
he has to have something. But then Staz also has the Kazakus potion that says transform everything.
Yeah.
So he has to be really mindful of it. Something that he also considered, Orange knows that Staz has 2 Kazakus potions. So he knows that there's still a threat of what Staz has as a follow-up, but this is his last chance to really do anything, and so we're going to see what random demons go into his hand right now.
He's getting at least the 8/8 to contest some of this board, and he gets the Pit Lord.
Those are the worst. Those are some of the worst ones. Pit Lord damages yourself. Blood Imp is completely useless, and I think that is going to be the beginning of the end here, as Orange has fought valiantly, but Staz, the Filipino player representing APAC, a player that's qualified 3 times for our Hearthstone championships and was denied twice by visas. He finally can potentially put his name in the international stage by winning $150,000 if he can get past his final hump here.
Yeah, he's not too far off. As long as he doesn't slip up by adding demons to his hand and playing a Cruel with the unlicensed Apothecary, he's good to go.
Yeah, what can Orange do? He has to play really defensive.
You require my assistance?
He's taking damage. He's behind on board. He can Frost Nova, but then Staz has budgeted to make sure he can take down the Antonites because he knows he still has it. And he can still pressure. The sickest thing of all is that he's with Brandon Kazakus, the gruesome twosome. He's just going to keep pushing 5 damage per turn until his opponent deals with it.
That's too little, too late. The fireball is not going to do very much. Staz is probably just going to be taking this. Orange is going to see the armor gain. The fatigue war is just way against him.
He actually has gained 10 armor twice.
Yeah, he's got 20 armor behind this. That's the crazy part. He's not remotely close to dead.
Okay, so he's transforming the minions to sheep, which is actually a little bit scary considering that there was a possibility of like Cruel, but he knows that he actually wants to use his fireball for lethal damage to accelerate the fatigue. And I think that might actually be the last 2 turns here, because Staz can deal Fireball to the face now, and then also Blizzard, and then Orange has to take 2 turns of fatigue damage.
Exactly, and that's going to be just the end. The Ice Block won't trigger, and it'll just die on the spot.
As long as Staz plays his Blizzard and he plays his Fireball to the face, that's going to wrap it up. Oh, he's going to play the
Doomsayer! Oh my god.
Okay, that's fine, that's fine.
Let's do it. He doesn't know what demons are there, right? It could
he
be
doesn't know
Jiraxis.
what demons there are. He's
Who
not
knows?
getting over angsty. He's playing everything to the bitter end here. And Orange gave it everything he got, but that is lights out. I mean, Pit Lord is the one way to go out honorably.
I like the Pit Lord.
We have ourselves a champion.
Not enough.
Orange is going to take the concede, and that means Staz is going to be the champion of WESG 2016, earning $150,000 and a huge, monumental win for Philippines, putting them on the global map for big victories in the Hearthstone Pro scene.
Yeah, what's crazy about this is that Staz doesn't look phased at all. Internally, though, it must be a different story.
Yeah, he's stone cold faced. You can tell from the very beginning he had composure. Orange had roller coasters of emotions going up and down, just kind of responding to the cards, but Staz able to keep calm and play to the best of his ability. A great handshake and a fantastic series going all the way to the 7th game with lots of unique decision makings and interesting deck choices that these guys made. I am thoroughly satisfied by that best of 7 Noxious.
Look at him lift up that trophy, the symbol of his victory here at WESG. Staz is your WESG 2016 champion. Hopefully we get to see more of him in the future.
Is it fate, Noxious? The fact that he's been denied so many chances to compete for a lot of money. And Staz, he's also been a person that has a real-time job. He has a person that doesn't actually always get to dedicate himself full-time to Hearthstone. And he's always been looking for an opportunity, a reason. Even though he's been qualifying for all these tournaments on the side, he's always been looking for an opportunity to go completely pro. And now that he has that money, $150,000, I'm sure he could take some time off from his job and maybe explore this career a little bit further.
I like to think that it was due to him, as Lorinda was putting it earlier. Now, Orange still not going home empty-handed, right? Let's not forget about the performance that he's put in the event. It's been amazing just watching him go through this. Lineups in the top 4 were very similar across the board, aside from Orange with the J Druid.
I love that the trophy is almost as big as Staz himself. I had no idea how he's going to fit that onto his carry-on.
Oh, this is beautiful.
TSA definitely will take that out in the name of defending terrorism.
What a
great series! What a great way to end a thrilling tournament. And you know, I was told that we were going to get an interview, but I think Staz may have declined that interview.
Like, I'll take my trophy and go home. Thank you.
Peace. Where's my check?
那么等一会儿会告诉各位。那么现在让我们稍进一段广告。
OK
各位朋友也不要急着离开，马上又要抽奖，下一个奖品呢比上个奖品啊至少贵10倍，所以走了就很可惜了哈。
They might bring him back
All right,
on stage.
so
right?
I think that means that we're signing off. They told us as soon as we can hear the audio. So from Friday and Noxious and everyone else here at WESG, want to give a big shout out to all the players who've competed all over the world. If you guys only caught the very end, you missed an entire